Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto becomes beast in Chunin exams part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Every type of creature has one or more leader. Whether it be a demon lord of hell, a great god of heaven, or a ruling king of the earth. Even summons have bosses to them. A higher force of their kind that sits at the top and give the commands. But there was one type of creature that had no such thing until about 15 years ago. It came in the form of a boy. His stunning blue eyes had captivated all. But on that day something happened. Something that no one would ever be able to explain until later. The day he was born, every bird, cat, mouse and dog began to cry out in excitement and happiness. This had generally confused the populace of Konoha. And things only got weirder over the next 3 years. He was an orphan. His parents died the day he was born, both killed within the horrible ravages of the ninja world. Minato Namaki, assassinated by someone that had found a way to duplicate the Hiroshin no Jutsu, and therefore ended up in a draw with the unknown Nin. Then Kushina Uzumaki, killed from complications during childbirth. Only the third Hokage knew of his lineage. The boy became distant to people over the next 3 years. Because the people were distant of him. They were afraid of his ability. And even more so when he began to display unnatural powers with the element of fire. Abilities that could not be explained. But that's not all. No matter what they were or who owned them, animals of all sorts would bow to him whenever he passed by. This had caused the villagers to begin to vie the boy as a freak. An unnatural force. Something that didn't belong. The Hokage had been greatly saddened by this, but he could do nothing to stop it. Then a history-changing moment occurred. It was an attack. But no normal attack. The attack came in the form of the legendary Kyubi no Kitsune. No one knows where she came from or why she showed up. But when she began to decimate the village, the ninja had no choice but to fight back. They stood no chance. But once again something odd happened. As the fox stepped over the broken walls of Konoha, she laid eyes on the boy. He was standing there amongst the destruction and chaos defiantly, and looking with fascination into her eyes as he tried to use his power to gain control over her, and failed to do so. The third Hokage and the remaining forces of Konoha could only gape in astonishment as the fox stared down at the boy for a whole 2 minutes before turning and walking away with a satisfied grunt. That only served to scare the villagers more. What kind of child was he to be able to get the fox to leave? He obviously could not control the demon, but to get her to leave anyway. Even the Hokage found himself questioning the boy. Just who was he? What was he? For the next 3 years it got worse for the boy. The villagers were getting bolder, openly calling him freak and monster. They jeered at him and alienated him from their children. They began to refuse him service at stores, and he was viewed as a threat to Konoha by the council. Finally they drove him away. One day the boy had just vanished, finally running from the people and the fears they had for him. There is a story. It is a tale of a creature that dwells deep within the forest of death. It tells of a being of astounding power that rules the forest and will lash out at any hostile being in the forest. No one knows where this creature came from or even why it lives in the forest of death instead of the more lush and beautiful forests of Konoha. There's a couple that claim to have encountered the creature, but they gave vastly different descriptions of the thing. One man claimed it had snake-like yellow eyes and enormous white wings and a reptilian tail, while another claimed it had canine-like claws, teeth and a tail. They say it has the ability to manipulate fire and had a good level of control over the beasts within. Whatever the tale may be, the Hokage has heard many. The fabled king of beasts that lives with the deepest parts of the forest of death has been on the forefront of his mind for 9 years. He knew what the thing really was. How no one else had caught on yet was beyond him. Hokage-sama, the preparations for the second stage of the Chunin exams are done. Shall we get ready at the tower? The Hokage nodded. Yes. It shouldn't be long now for the contestants to finish their written tests. Let's go. Hi. Sarutobi is his name. Nicknamed the Professor of Konoha, with over 1,000 mastered jutsus under his belt. He is among the most powerful of shinobi to have ever existed, and he wears the title of Hokage proudly. He and the proctors for the Chunin exam moved swiftly towards the tower in the center of the forest of death. My, how he felt about this. There were several extremely talented rookies this year, and he wanted to see how far they'd get. That got him to thinking about something else. If he was here, he'd definitely be participating. My, how I missed that boy. The other proctors didn't say anything, for they knew whom he was talking about. Hokage-sama, why do you waste so much time worrying for him? He's not important. This proved to be the wrong thing to say, as the ignorant fool to have just said then found a katana at his neck, courtesy of the one named Hate. Do not insult him. That boy deserved none of the shit he was put through, he growled out. Sarutobi felt the same way. If only the village wasn't so afraid of his strange power, then maybe the boy would still be around, dazzling the populace with that bright smile of his. He looked to the side and saw a larger than what would be considered normal wolf looking at them curiously. It had golden eyes and silver fur. It wasn't part of a pack. He gazed at the creature before continuing on his way. The beasts of this forest were quite the sight to see. That is why this place would make such a great ground for a test. And the king of beasts didn't seem to mind them being in his forest since they haven't been attacked. I hope the genin can survive in here, commented one of the jounin. Alright. This year we're going to be using an older training ground for our second test. This will test your survival skills to the limit, hehehe, bellowed out the second exam proctor with an insane smile on her face. This woman's name is Mitarashi Enko. She's 21 years old and a holder of the title Special Jounin. Specialty is assassination. She grinned down at the group of nervous-looking teens and continued her speech. Now those from the Leaf surely know what this place is, There were a few nods, then someone near the back bellowed out, "Are you nuts? That's the Forest of Death. The place where the King of Beasts resides. I ain't going in there." Enko grinned and shined over to the panicking boy. He had short brown hair and a triangle marking on each cheek. He was sitting on the back of a huge floppy-eared dog and pointing at the forest. Well, if you'd rather turn tail and run like a little puppy, then go ahead. Besides, the King of Beasts is just a story. No one has ever seen him so relax. The boy shrugged and looked over at his teammates. They were giving him the quit now and die glare, though one was hidden behind a pair of shades. He started to sweat. The said, "Fine, but I see anything weird and we're running away. I ain't fighting nothing," labeled the King of Beasts. His teammates seemed satisfied by his answer and backed off. Enko grinned and said, "Yeah, well, if you do meet him, describe him to me next time we meet. That is, if he doesn't eat you, hehehehe." Now others were interested, namely, the team from Suna, the team from Oto, and a team from Kusa. "What is this King of Beasts?" asked the redhead from Suna. "Yes, I too would like to know," said the girl from Kusa with a creepy smile. Enko just grinned and said, "The story says that he arrived about 9 years ago. They say he has the power over fire itself and the power to control beasts and bend them to his will. Some say he can transform into said beasts, and they say he's some kind of powerful entity. There are a couple who claim to have met him, but I think they're full of it. Not even Konoha knows much about him. They just go on what others claim to have witnessed. Though I suspect that the King of Beasts is actually someone who was outcast by the villagers. A young boy that the animals bowed to whenever he walked by." "And you're having us take a test in there?" asked the long-haired girl from Oto. "Oh, quit whining. If the King of Beasts does exist, which is doubtful, I doubt he'd be looking for his next human meal. Now sign these and get your scrolls so we can get this started." This King of Beasts interests me," said the Kusanin. "I agree. Power over fire and animals. It seems to be some sort of special ability. A Kikei Genkei, perhaps?" "Maybe. But for now, continue on with the plan. I will locate Sasuke-kun." "Hi." The Kusanin then melted into the ground and took off to the east. "Sabaku Soso." "Ah." As the black metal sand retreated back into the redhead's gourd, he looked to his left where 3 more nin were hiding in terror. "Alright, we have the scroll, let's go, Gaara," said one of his teammates, a young man dressed in black and had face paint on. Gaara continued to eye the spot where the other 3 were hidden, then he began to gather sand. "I want to find this King of the Beasts." I'm not sure that's a good idea. Let's just get to the tower." Gaara glared, then said, "You think I cannot defeat this foe?" "No, I'm saying we're in the middle on an exam." Gaara glared, then said, "If you weren't my teammate, I'd kill you." The boy just shrugged and said, "Well, let's just get to the tower. Then we'll look for the king, alright? Hell, he might even show up at the tower to find out what all the commotion is." Gaara looked over at his teammate, then sighed. "Alright, let's go. And to the 3 in the bushes, be lucky, I feel satisfied right now." He then faded away, leaving behind 3 shocked genin and a shivering dog. All over the forest the teams battled it out, and even killed each other. They fought using everything they had in their arsenals, and they stole the items of their defeated foes, completely unaware of the presence that was watching it all. "You see, the rumors and the story are true. There is something living in the forest of death, and he does have the ability to control animals. He is their leader. The Alpha. The top creature. No other is strong enough to defeat him and assume the role of king, so he stays at the top. Every beast bows before his presence. It had been that way since as long as he remembered. But that was all old news now. When he entered this ancient forest full of great and ancient beasts, he began the process of rising to the top of the ecosystem, and he became the established leader of many different species. He crouched down as a large silver-furred wolf approached and made a series of yip growls and small barks. The being responded with similar sounds, then handed the wolf a large slab of meat. Once the wolf was gone, the being stood upright and looked up into the sky. The moonlight finally coming from behind the clouds and shining down upon him, revealing a pair of sapphire blue eyes. These creatures that had entered his forest seemed so familiar to him. Like he belonged with them. He quickly threw that thought away. This was his home. He pondered the last 4 days since they had entered his domain. They were doing some kind of test. No doubt to hone their survival skills. They were even killing each other. He remembered that a couple of these creatures were powerful and abnormally so, like the one that smelled of snakes or the old man that had dashed through earlier. He had observed a couple of teams and saw them use strange abilities. But these abilities also seemed familiar. He remembered watching as the one who smelled of snake attacked a group and bit one of them in the neck. Then he remembered the power that soon came off of that one as well. These creatures were so interesting to him. They were full of strange abilities. He was taken out of his thoughts when a large reptile that stood on 2 legs emerged from the bushes. It looked like a vicious evolved iguana and had a set of wicked-looking claws on its feet. Its golden eyes shined with great intelligence, and it showed by the body language and series of clicks and growls it was making in the form of the question it was asking as it carried one of the creatures in its mouth. Found him dead. Can I eat him? After checking to make sure the creature that looked similar to him was indeed dead, he granted his permission. The reptile wasted no time and dug in. He looked down at the reptile affectionately. This one was still young and brash, looking for the next thrill. He had no doubt in his mind that the creature he was eating was far from dead when he found him, but he really didn't care. Those creatures were taking a survival test. If they cannot survive in his forest, then they will get eaten. He tensed though when the scent of blood suddenly bombarded his nose. Someone was attacked again, but not by any of the creatures in his forest. It seemed one of the creatures had attacked another of its own kind. Normally he would ignore it, but he could smell the pure enjoyment the attacker had exhumed while doing so. It made him a bit angry. He left the raptor to his meal and dashed over to the spot. He dropped from the tree when he was sure that there were no more of those creatures around and examined the form in front of him. It was a female if his senses judged correctly. She was unconscious and breathing heavily. A deep gash was across her stomach and blood was gushing out like a small stream. She didn't have much time. "Oh, Orochimaru," she said, causing him to raise an eyebrow. So something called the Orochimaru had done this to her. No matter. He quickly tore off her shirt and examined the cut. It was nasty, and he could see a bit of her insides. This was easily curable. "Chakra," he muttered as he placed his hands on the wound. A second later, a green glow emitted from his hands and bathed the wound in its light. He could feel the female sigh from the warmth, but he ignored it. The wound took 5 minutes to heal, and with each passing minute the female's eyes opened just a bit more. When he was done, he stood back up and sighed. He didn't really know why he helped this creature. Perhaps it was the fact that she was attacked for a different reason other than to test her survival skills. He was looking back up at the sky when something sharp grazed his cheek. "Who are you? What do you want, huh?" He snapped his gaze back to the female, and saw that she was up on her feet and glaring while brandishing something small, sharp, and made of something harder than stone or bone. She opened her eyes and saw someone she had never seen before looking up at the sky with a satisfied look on his face. It was then that she noticed that she was torn off, and she immediately jumped to the wrong conclusion. She flung a kunai at him, then leapt to her feet. "Who are you? What do you want, huh?" she yelled at the stranger. But when his gaze snapped over to her, all other words died in her throat. His eyes were the most stunning of blue she had ever seen. She held in a gasp and examined the stranger more. He stood about 6 feet tall and had an amazing body build. He had a fine tan and was dressed in a loincloth. His hair was ridiculously long. It dangled a foot below his feet as he stood on a branch and swayed in the wind. His fingers were clawed and ready to be used. She could see that he was tense. He regarded her with narrowed eyes for a second before he sighed and turned to leave. "Hey, wait." He paused and looked back at her, his eyes swimming with confusion. "I have some questions and you're gonna answer them. First of all, who are you and why'd you rip off my shirt? He just continued to stare, then he smiled. Almost as he were laughing at her. She grit her teeth. All right then, little boy. Have it your way. She vanished. Seconds later, a kunai was at his throat, and he couldn't help but grin even more. Did she really think she could win? He'd show her. She leaned closer to his ear and whispered, Not that I don't appreciate you healing me and all, it's just that there's a dangerous criminal named Orochimaru running around out here, and you, sir, are unfamiliar. So it's only natural we take you in for questioning. Suddenly 3 more dropped down. They were wearing cloaks and porcelain masks. He wondered how he didn't sense them coming, but they shrugged it off. These creatures were foolhardy, and it was time to put them in their place. He turned his head and hissed loudly, causing the female to gasp and leap away. But it was not fast enough, as his right arm suddenly transformed into a snake, extended then wrapped around her. Hey! The other 3 dashed forward, intent on rescuing their comrade, but it was all for naught. With a grunt, his left arm turned into that of a gorilla, and he bashed all 3 away with a powerful swing. The female gasped and stabbed the snake arm with a kunai, causing him to grunt and drop her. You work for Orochimaru. She leapt up and extended her arm. He held in surprise when several snakes emerged from her sleeves and rushed at him. Who would have thought she had an ability like that? His snake arm transformed again into a large turtle shell and blocked the initial strikes. She widened her eyes when she saw that, but held strong as the snakes wrapped around him. What the hell are you? His answer came in the form of his hair suddenly coming to life, wrapping around him, the jutting outward in all directions like the spines of a porcupine, and dispelling the summoned snakes. The 3 others had recovered as well, and they unleashed their attacks. Katan, Gokyaku no Jutsu. He watched impassively as the fireballs headed to him, and gave a lazy flick of his fingers. The 4 Konoha nin gasped when the fire stopped in mid-air, then transformed into a pair of clawed hands before rushing back at them. They were so shocked actually that only 2 were spared a fiery death. Anko and the Anbu in the cat mask. What is he? I don't know. We must report this to Hokage-sama. Their conversation was interrupted when their foe suddenly howled for a few seconds, then he seemed to transform on the inside of the neck, and he let out a long loud hiss before changing again and letting out a weird vibrating call. They watched as both arms and his hair returned to normal and 2 tails sprouted from his back, a wolf's tail and a scorpion's tail. They gasped when a small army of snakes, raptors and wolves emerged from the bushes and eyed them hungrily. But the biggest shock came when a huge pair of white bat wings emerged from his back and gave a mighty flap, and his eyes turned black and beady like bats, and he began to speak to the beasts using the right sounds for the right type of beast. They seemed to nod, then turned their attention to the 2. It was then that Anko had a stunning realization. This wasn't some lackey of Orochimaru. No, they were facing off against something else. A Yugao? She asked the remaining Anbu. Why yes, Anko? Replied Yugao while trying to keep her cool. Run! The 2 took off without a second thought. He could smell their fear. Hell, he could taste it in the air. These creatures were strong, he'd give them that, but they could not match him. He had given the orders to his pack mates not to kill them. Just give them a good scare. He could tell they had type of idea who he was, so that led him to conclude that the creatures told stories about him. Perhaps those other few he had met in the past had spread the word. He grinned and watched from above on his wings as the 2 females made a mad dash toward the structure in the center of the forest, raptors and wolves hot on their heels with snakes lunging out of the trees at them. Oh, how he loved the chase. It was so invigorating. He watched as the 2 rushed into the structure and slammed the door shut hard, then he dropped from the sky and shared a few humored grunts and growls with his pack mates before they all dispersed back into the forest. Perhaps he should go in? See what the sudden interest in this structure the creatures have. He himself has been inside several times and found nothing that interested him. But then again, he wasn't in the middle of a test. Maybe that was it, another part of the test? His body returned to normal, and he walked up to the door. He ignored the nervous clicks coming from the raptors. Sarutobi had just finished his announcement that the 3rd stage of the Chunin exams were underway, and he and several others were watching as the first match was ready to begin when the doors slammed open and rushing in came Anko and Yugao. All eyes were instantly upon the 2 as they looked disheveled. If the amounts of twigs, scrapes and dirt covering their person was any indication, and they had a combination look of fear and excitement on their faces. Hokage-sama! Exclaimed Anko as she dashed to the middle of the arena, much to the annoyance of the 2 genin that were ready to fight, and completely forgetting that her shirt was ripped, exposing her breasts, and causing several nosebleeds. Sarutobi looked at the two ninja and raised an eyebrow while desperately having a mental battle with his own urge to bleed from the nose. We met him. Huh. We met him. It was incredible. You should have seen it. Sarutobi jumped to his feet. Met who? Orochimaru. Where is he? Well, I met Orochimaru too and he nearly killed me, but that's not important. I met someone else, Hokage-sama. Now everyone was paying attention and the jounin for Oto didn't look too happy. Not important. Yugao stepped forward and said, Hokage-sama? Enko, I and two more Anbiyu who are now dead had a run-in with the fabled king of beasts of the Forest of Death. There were some gasps and couple of yarites. From a couple of the genin. Enko glared at the genin and said, I wouldn't lie about something like this. He had extremely long yellow hair and the most beautiful blue eyes I have ever seen. He was dressed in a loincloth and could transform parts of his body into different animal parts. He could move at great speed and had a master's control over fire. He literally bent it to his will when the Anbiyu tried to grand fireball his ass. He was an amazing fighter, and when he called forth the snakes, walking iguanas and the wolves from the forest with different animal calls, I realized who he was. The Hokage gasped and said, what color was his hair again? Enko seemed a bit nervous by the Hokage's sudden discomfort but went to answer anyway. It was yellow, sir. Sarutobi flopped down and began to mutter to himself. Could it be? If so, then yes, I was right. Hokage-sama, what? Suddenly the doors burst open again, and in came the fabled king of beasts, his long hair dragging on the floor as he stepped into the arena and examined all before him. That's him, said both females as they leapt away into Sarutobi. Everyone gasped and examined him. The girls all blushing when they saw his well-toned and tan body while the guys just gaped. He's our age, exclaimed the spiky-haired Oto genin. The Beast King slowly swept his gaze over the creatures before him until he finally locked eyes with the elder. For a whole minute they stared into each other's eyes until finally the elder snapped out of it and gave a huge warm happy smile, while saying one thing that would cause numerous people to gasp again. Naruto. The king vs. the sand. Shock reverberated through the arena like a wave when Sarutobi had said that name. Many of the Konoha genin were instantly brought back to the young days when a small yellow-haired boy would proudly explain his dreams of being the Hokage someday, while some of the older generation were instantly brought back to the days that they had harassed him. One such person was the man that had insulted him a few days prior in the Forest of Death and was threatened by hate. He glared at the boy and thought one thing. I thought we got rid of that freak. Some of the girls were lost in thought. One such was a young woman named Hyuga Hinata. And Naruto-kun. It's really Naruto-kun. I can't believe it. Oh my, he's so scantily clad. Oh, I'm gonna. And without another thought she fainted. Holy shit. That's Naruto. I remember that kid. He was annoying and loud and he sucked at school. But now this came from the young pink-haired woman named Haruno Sakura. Just look at all that hair. No way. He's gorgeous, thought Yamanaka Ino. Similar thoughts were going through the minds of the rest of the females as well. Kurenai for one was holding back a nosebleed. But the girls weren't the only ones full of thoughts. Gaara was eyeing the blonde carefully, his aquamarine eyes scanning every part of the boy's body. He reeked of power, and it made his lust for battle grow. Uchiha Sasuke raised an eyebrow at the blonde. This was the king of beasts? He guessed it made sense given the odd things that happened before his disappearance, but to make such a big deal out of it? This blonde boy was still just as dope in his eyes. An idiot that was not deserving of the stories told about him. A man named Kakashi thought the same thing. The boy was indeed gifted with a strange power, but he remembered how lacking the boy had been before he vanished. There wasn't any way he could have gotten much stronger if all he did was hide in a forest for 9 years. He shrugged and put his nose back into his perverted book. A disguised Orochimaru was practically excited. He had never seen this boy before, and like Gaara, he too could sense the power hidden behind those confused blue eyes. I wonder how he would take a curseal. Kukuku. For a whole 5 minutes everyone just continued to stare, and he likewise. But then something completely unexpected happened. A genin by the name of Inuzuka Kiba and his large dog Akamaru along with the kiki-eye beetles of a young man named Abirame Shino rushed at the blonde. Many exclaimed words of shock and warning, but they were ignored. When the three finally got to Naruto, something else unexpected happened. Kiba and Akamaru bowed while the bugs swarmed around him affectionately. Naruto-sama, said Kiba with his head bowed while Akamaru said the same thing in his native tongue. Naruto chuckled a bit as the beetles crawled all over him, and he gave a pat to both Kiba and Akamaru's heads. If jaws could unhinge and fall through the ground, they would have. No fucking way! Yelled a young woman named Tenten. A couple of the Oto-nin were flat out laughing. I don't believe it! He's bowing! He's actually bowing! Ha ha, he really is a dog! Exclaimed Abumizaka while Dosu and Kin just stared. What the hell are you doing? Kiba looked up at the Uchiha and said with a glare. He's my king. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, then voiced the question that was going through all the moment. What the fuck are you talking about? Kiba looked down and said, It's instinct, Sasuke. All of the Inuzuka have it. We are more in tune with our baser instincts than most. In a sense, we are more dog-like than human. I can't really understand why, but I can smell his superiority. It's strange. He emits a feeling that commands me to submit to him. At this there were a few whispers. Sasuke scoffed and grabbed Kiba's collar to yank him up. I bet your clan would laugh at you if they saw this. Kiba grinned. Nope. They'd do exactly what I was doing. Something you should do as well. Please. And Uchiha bows before no one. Kiba yanked Sasuke's hand from his jacket and said, You're too arrogant. Sasuke pushed Kiba out of the way and walked right up to Naruto and got in his face. So the dog thinks you're a king, eh? Wait, Uchiha, don't do it! Yelled Anko, but it was too late. Sasuke reared back and delivered a fierce punch to Naruto's face, causing him to fly back and hit the wall. Pfft, typical. He's nothing, Kiba, just like I said. Sarutobi glared. Sasuke! Do not attack people that do not deserve it! Sasuke crossed his arms. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, it's just that everyone makes such a big deal about the oh-so-powerful king of beasts. I thought I should take him down a peg or two. Many were feeling disappointed. They thought Naruto was strong. Oh well, looks can be deceiving. That is not the point. That boy is not. Sarutobi's words died in his throat because Naruto suddenly appeared in front of the Uchiha and gave a powerful punch to his stomach, causing him to puke and to go flying backward. Holy shit! He's fast! Sasuke skidded to a stop, crouched over and clutching stomach in great pain while trying to regain his breath. Naruto himself had an impassive face as he approached the Uchiha. I can understand, he said, much to the shock of the room. I'm not idiot. Live in forest does not mean I can't talk. Sasuke glared while breathing heavily. Naruto looked at the young man and grinned. You weak. Still pup. Still hatchling. What? I'll show you. Sasuke leapt to his feet and charged at Naruto with a kunai. Naruto merely stepped to the side, then leapt away, sailing over everyone into the spot where Sarutobi stood. He didn't use any chakra, was the surprised yell of a young man named Rock Lee. At first it was hazy, barely noticeable, but over the next couple of minutes it became much clearer. When the elder had said that word, Naruto, it all had started coming back. Memories. Past events, childhood adventures, and a troubled beginning. He had become lost in thought as the memories continued to flood his mind. Things that were so alien to him suddenly became familiar. Faces and names that he once did not understand were suddenly clear to him, and the meaning of the word Naruto was obvious to him as well. Then the boy, his dog, and the swarm of beetles had approached him and addressed him as their lord. It had also brought back more memories. Times during the past where he would easily befriend a stray animal wherever he went. Times where even huge tigers and packs of wolves would bow before him in front of crowds of people, freaking them out and causing them to react negatively. It all came back. Then there was the group of people in front of him now. They were people he knew. Well, most of them were. He remembered he used to do something called Sinbai training with some of them. No, not Sinbai Shinobi. Yeah. Then when the one called the Sasuke had gotten in his face and spoke with that tone of superiority, and insulted the Kiba, one last memory came back. He remembered how to speak more of their tongue than just the word chakra. Though his vocabulary wasn't very broad, it was enough to get his point across after he sent the boy across the arena with a punch. Then when he leapt to the old man, he couldn't help but smile. Gigi Hokage, he said. Sarutobi's eyes had widened, and then without another word he was engulfed in a bear hug from the old man. It is absolutely fantastic to see you after all these years, Naruto. Naruto grinned and untangled his legs from his hair. Yeah, good see you too. Sasuke meanwhile was lost in thought. What the hell have you been doing, Naruto no Baka? How strong have you become? Ugh, my stomach. Whatever. I'll find out sooner or later. For now I must pass this exam. Sarutobi had released Naruto, but still kept smiling. So why have you come here anyway, Naruto? I was getting worried that you might be dead. Naruto shook his head. Not dead. Got chased away. Became pack leader for forest. Became alpha. He then looked over at a still uneasy Yugao and Anko. Had fun chasing, he said with a smile. Anko instantly lost all sense of unease and was in his face. Fun? You terrified us for fun. Naruto shrugged. You started it. Anko growled but was subdued by a wave of the hand from the Hokage. Anyway, I'm sure everyone has questions, but we're still in the middle of an exam. Save your questions until afterwards, please. There were a few groans, but every agreed save their questions until later. A lot of thoughts ran through his head as he crouched on the railing and observed the arena below. What was the point of this? Pitting them against each other. Was it for the enjoyment of the crowd? Did it serve a higher purpose? He thought about asking the elder but changed his mind and decided to just watch. One by one the matches came and went. Naruto had been surprised a couple of times by some of the abilities. The redhead with the iron sand was ruthless and bloodthirsty. He was powerful and resourceful as well. But that other one in green was no pushover either. His ability to do something called opening the inner gates had surprised him a lot. He had no idea people were capable of such a thing. The one called the Sasuke was still so angry about the punch that he absolutely destroyed his opponent, blasting the poor man with a fire dragon. The two females called the Sakura and the Ino were pretty entertaining. They fought for a while, exclaiming their love for the Sasuke and eventually knocking each other out with powerful punches to the jaws. He was disappointed when the Kiba lost to the one called the Sai, but he gave the dog boy the benefit of the doubt. Those painted animals were quite a force to have to deal with. But he was satisfied when the one called the Shino won his match against the one called the Zaku. He figured one with a far weaker ability like his had better be equipped to win. Though he felt the most emotion when he saw the match between the two dubbed, the Niji and the Hinata. He didn't like the way the Niji treated his fellow pack member but didn't say anything. It was not his place to do so lest he cause an unnecessary conflict that would end up with more of the creatures that were like him getting killed. One by one they fought each other, and soon only half of the genin that entered the tower were standing in a line. The elder had phased out and reappeared in front of the group of genin and congratulated them on passing the second stage of the exam, then explained to them that they had a month of training to commence before the final part of the Chunin exams were to take place. He found the whole thing interesting. Perhaps he should attend these matches in a month? He knew they would spread the word about him once they left his forest, but it didn't bother him. Hey, what about him? Naruto shifted his gaze and saw one of the masked Nin staring at him. Sarutobi shrugged. What about him? He can come if he wants. But shouldn't we? I doubt you could force him to come with us if you wanted to. That boy easily defeated 3 ANBU and a special Jounin. Naruto heard this and said, I feel regret killing those two, not mean to. Sarutobi smiled. It's alright though, I will have to take some sort of action in the future. For now just enjoy yourself. Show off in front of the girls, hehe. At this, Sakura, Hinata, Ino and the Oto Nin named Kin and several others blushed and tore their eyes off of him. Naruto himself just raised an eyebrow. In any case, I need the victorious genin to come here and draw from this box. This will determine your upcoming matches. Naruto was able to hear the coming face-offs. Sai vs Niji. Shino vs Kankuro. Sasuke vs Gaara. Shikamaru vs Temari. Kankuro vs Shino. And Dosa got a free pass. He could tell they were all excited and wanted to show off. They were so energetic it was humorous to him. Finally they calmed down and began to chat amongst themselves. Naruto, after realizing that nothing else was going on, decided that he had seen enough. These creatures he remembered were called shinobi were quite an interesting thing to observe. But alas, he would need to return. His forest was already calling for him, the beasts that followed him growing worried for their master. Naruto gave a small smile to the elder who was chuckling as the Anko and the Yugao excitably described their encounter with him. He smiled a bit at that as well. At least they didn't hate him, like before. He leapt off of the railing and landed in front of the door. But just as his hand grabbed the knob, a voice stops him. It was a shy, quiet voice that also held a bit of disappointment. Why, you're leaving? Already? Naruto turned around and focused his deep blue orbs into the suddenly surprised bright green eyes of the one called the Sakura. She was standing before him with her hands behind her head facing away shyly while she looked from the corners of her eyes with a blush. Naruto looked down at her and said, "Time to return. Home in forest. Been gone too long. Uncomfortable." Sakura nodded in understanding. "But do you have to leave so soon? I mean, we barely got to say anything to you because of the exams." Naruto looked up in thought. Memories of this female bombarded his mind. She was a shy girl with low self-esteem due to her large forehead and pink hair. She was a girl that was much like him in some ways. He started to think. Sakura looked at Naruto with hopeful eyes. She really wanted to do a bit of catching up with the blonde. It had been so long since she had seen him. And he had grown so damn good looking. Only he could pull off the loincloth and extremely long hair, she thought with a smile. That smile quickly turned to a gasp when Naruto suddenly spouted a pair of huge black feathery wings and his eyes turned gray. "He can transform!" exclaimed the Sannin Temari. There were similar exclamations and a smile from Kiba. Naruto looked back at Sakura and said, "I apologize, but I leave now." A mighty flap of his wings propelled him into the air, and the entire room watched as he circled above them. Twice he circled, like a vulture that had spotted a carcass before jetting right to the door. However, his path was once again interrupted when a wall of black sand rose up and caused him to collide with it. "Fight me," said Gaara as he appeared in a swirl of sand in the middle of the arena. Naruto leapt to his feet and turned around slowly to face the red-headed young man. His eyes having turned back to normal while his wings receded into his back. He brushed one of his 2-foot-long bangs from his eyes and growled out before turning to leave again. This did not sit well with Gaara at all. He was not to be ignored by anyone. Not even this guy who is spoken of all over the village like a legend. He watched as the Beast King walked around his sand and once again headed for the door. "I said fight me." And with that, Gaara struck. Naruto was a bit surprised by the actions of the Gaara but wasn't really put off by them. He knew that several people in the room wanted to fight him. It was merely a matter of time before one of them couldn't handle it anymore and struck. This was part of the reason he wanted to leave. He had seen what he came to see and felt it was time to return to his forest. He could feel the desire to kill emanating from the Gaara and one of the masked shinobi. He also felt the desire to fight coming from the Sasuke and the Dosu, and he was beginning to grow uncomfortable under the wanting gaze of the shinobi watching over the Odo Genin team. The man was strong and smelled of snakes, the same creature that had given the Sasuke that strange power. But his annoyance began to grow when the Gaara yelled out, "I said fight me." Just who did he think he was? He comes into his forest and demands a fight with him? Did he think he was special because of the sand? Because it had a mind of its own? His thoughts, though, were cut off when several yells of, "Look out, Naruto!" rang through the room a second before something big, heavy and incredibly hard smashed into his back and pinned him against the wall. He could feel the cold metal slowly pressing him into the wall, as if trying to slowly crush his body into nothingness. "I have no time for this," he growled out as his body began to glow orange. Gaara stared on in disappointment. All that hype about this Beast King for this? To watch as his sand slowly crushed the fool against the walls? Embarrassing. He ignored the shouts from the other shinobi that were telling him to knock off his foolish behavior, and he ignored the Hokage who was glaring but with a hint of pity. It was as if the old man was giving Gaara a warning stare that said, "Do not take Naruto lightly. You will pay for it dearly and I pity you for the ass beating you're about to receive." This pissed him off. "Old man, I'll destroy this fool right before your eyes." Baki, Temari and Kankuro were growing a bit nervous. Gaara's second personality was beginning to surface, and the more that happened, the more of a chance that his sand would come to life. Gaara's split personality, and his iron sand Kikei Genkei melded one day when he was 6. The boy had been plying by himself, and using his special ability to create all sorts of cool statues when a woman appeared before him and mentally tortured him for hours while claiming that his ability was a pathetic recreation of her power. The resulting thirst for revenge and desire to kill created this personality. And since he vowed to use the iron sand to wipe the woman from existence, that lust for death and bloodshed became imbued into his sand. In a sense, a new bloodline limit was born. But even having intelligent iron sand couldn't have prepared him for what happened next. It came out of nowhere. None of the shinobi occupying the room felt the buildup. The power. But when Naruto unleashed it, boy, that was something to gasp about. Fire so hot it glowed white exploded outward with such force it created a shock wave that rocked the forest. Holy shit. It was like a maelstrom of superheated globs of melted metal, rock, and air. Gaara's sand so instantly liquefied that one could have doubted it was sand in the first place. The melted debris flew out in all directions away from Naruto, and nearly killed several people, and his once blue eyes were now glowing orange with anger and power. His hair whipping around wildly and his hands balled into fists. Gaara had frozen, along with everyone else. This truly was the fabled Beast King. The fire spiraled around Naruto fiercely, switching from orange to blue to white to back again. It was the most beautiful thing the group of shinobi had ever seen. "You annoy me," stated Naruto as he took a step forward. "Want fight so bad? Fine. I show why I rule forest." He lifted his head and let out the loudest, longest and strangest call they had ever heard. It was like a combination of a scream, a howl and rodents clicking and a gorilla's mating call. When he was done he smirked at Gaara and said, "Gather metal sand. We fight." Kiba and Akamaru felt control of their bodies vanish, and before they knew it they were standing beside Naruto, ready to fight. Shino's Kiki-eye beetles were the same. They left their home and converged on Naruto's person. "What's going on?" yelled Temari. This was definitely not what she expected to see. Gaara's recollected his sand and everything else that was made of metal and glared at the Beast King. "I control metal. I'm not easy to defeat." Naruto merely grinned and said, "You control but one thing." Suddenly the door burst open, and in they came. Wolves, snakes, foxes, coyotes, scorpions, birds, bats, raptors, flies, chipmunks, squirrels, mice, rats, lizards and numerous other species spilled into the room. Countless beasts of all different types poured into the arena from the door, and quickly filled the floor. The shinobi could only gasp and leap to higher ground. "But I control many," finished Naruto. Gaara's shock was matched only by the other occupants of the room. Naruto stood before him with an army waiting to attack. He was completely surrounded, and Naruto's fire seemed to give the creature more power. "Incredible!" exclaimed Kakashi, Kurenai and Baki at the same time. "That Sannin is dead," said Ino with a look of pure horror on her face. "Gaara, get out of there!" screamed Kankuro. Never in his life had he seen anything like this. Naruto smirked as his fingers on his left hand transformed into 5 long snakes, and his hair turned into porcupine quills. But that wasn't all. His legs bent back and became those of an eagle, while his face elongated and became that of a raptor. Gaara was afraid. What the hell is he? He wasn't human. No human could have the type of power he had. He took a step back. Naruto chuckled and bent forward. "Attack!" he commanded. Then it happened. The creatures surged forward at speeds that some species should not have. Kiba and Akamaru reached their target first and tried to get Suga the redhead, but it was blocked by the sand this time. Arg! He looked down and saw a large scorpion removing its stinger from his leg, but before he could do anything, a heavy fist smashed right through his sand and into his head. He flew back and was caught in the talons of a huge condor. The sand lashed out and bashed the bird in the chest, causing it to release him, but it was all for naught. The shinobi clung to the walls and the ceilings and could only watch in awe as Gaara was systematically destroyed by Naruto and his beasts. His sand was practically useless. There were just too many enemies to defend against. And add to the fact that Naruto kept melting it, and it only made things worse for Gaara. However, Gaara was powerful and stubborn. His sand lashed out at everything and killed numerous beasts. Its defenses and durability seemingly increasing during the fight, and his reflexes got better. He created an arm of sand and bashed several raptors away while simultaneously ducking under the slash of a tiger. His sand shield blocked the strike of a large snake, but not the attack from Naruto himself. His burning fist melted right through the sand and buried itself in his stomach, filling his entire being with immeasurable pain. "Gaara!" screamed Temari as the redhead was launched backward and into the waiting crowd of a pack of 30 wolves and Kiba. They proceeded to maul him for the next minute until Naruto commanded them to stop. Naruto was impassive as he vanished and reappeared with Gaara held up by the throat. The beast stopped attacking and looked on in anticipation. Gaara glared and tried to strike with more sand, only for it to melt upon contact with his body. He was in horrible shape. He had never even experienced the slightest of pain during the course of his entire life, but now, as he hung almost limply from Naruto's snake fingers, it was all he felt. It was a feeling he never wanted to feel again. "Understand now?" said Naruto as he dropped the young Sannin. "I'm not weak, stronger than most, you no match for me." The beasts howled out their agreements while Kiba shouted, "Hell yeah!" Gaara looked up and wheezed out, "What are you?" Naruto looked up in thought. Not sure, born with strange power. Born with bond to animals. But what about the fire? Same thing. I think it because fire wild, untamed and free like animal. Fire is animal spirit. Gaara nodded weakly. I see. You really aren't human. Or rather. Naruto raised an eyebrow and bent down. Chakra, he said as his hands began to glow green. Within 10 minutes, Gaara was healed mostly. All of the different poisons were removed from his system, and his injuries were taken care of. He was still heavily bruised, and his sand was slowly but surely reforming out of the twisted, melted, then hardened metal laying all over the place, but he wasn't in any more danger. The other shinobi wearily came down from their positions on the walls and ceilings, and slowly approached Naruto and his beasts. They heard a few of them growl, but a command from Naruto and their tongue quelled them. Naruto transformed back to normal and smiled. I sorry, he said. I not mean to scare. Just put up start in place. Gaara growled and uttered a weak, shut up. Sarutobi approached and said, no apologies are needed. You merely were defending yourself. There were grunts of agreement from the beasts. Naruto smiled again and examined the rest of the group. Most were still openly stunned, while others such as the Anko, the Ino, the Kin and the Sakura were looking with admiration and starry eyes. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing about it. After all, females of the forest were always attracted to the strongest of their species. Perhaps it was the same for the shinobi as well. He turned back to the Hokage and said, I leave now, before turning and heading to the door for a third time. Wait, Naruto. Naruto turned to face the Hokage. Will you come visit? Naruto was quiet for what seemed like an eternity before he smiled. I might. And with that, he was gone. The beasts collected their fallen comrades and they too were gone in a couple of minutes. Kiba, Akamaru and Shino's Kiki-Eye beetles remained behind. Once Naruto was gone, Kiba blinked a few times as if coming out of a trance, before gaining an amazed expression on his face. He could control me too, he bellowed out in a voice that was full of excitement. Arf. Shino himself was deep in conversation with his own creatures. Slowly the shock of everything wore off and the shinobi headed out of the arena and back toward Konoha. Oh yeah, there were some stories that needed to get told and fast. Orochimaru sat in a hidden room in the tower along with Kabuto. My, now this is a most stunning development. The Beast King, eh? Kukukuku. Extraordinary. I never thought the fabled king of beasts would be this powerful at such a young age. Kabuto adjusted his glasses. Orochimaru-sama, do you know anything about this boy? The snake Sannin grinned. Not a thing. However, I did stumble upon an old prophecy when I was younger. It stated that at long last, after eons of waiting, a person would be born. He or she would be gifted with the power to control the common beast. He would unite them and bring them greatness. It stated that this fabled new lord would be looked down upon by the lords of the other realms, and that he would have to prove himself to them. It is said that the Lord of Beasts would be gifted with the very spirit element of the animal, and his power would grow to astounding, unfathomable levels. He would force the other lords to recognize the power of the beast if he had to. And this Naruto is that person? Orochimaru shrugged. I do not know. For all I know, it could just be a powerful Kiki-Eye Genkei. I really do not put my beliefs in folklore and legends. However, I will keep an eye out for that boy. He is very powerful. That is something I cannot deny or simply overlook. What do you plan to do? Orochimaru shrugged. We'll proceed with the invasion as planned. If the so-called King of Beasts interferes, I'll deal with him personally. Sadistic laughter could be heard echoing through the now empty arena. The Inuzuka's problem. Enter Gaara, Sakura and Shikamaru. Chaos erupted all over Konoha as soon as the shinobi emerged from the forest of death. Stories erupted all over as the group rushed home to their loved ones in order to excitably talk about their encounter with the Beast King. Villagers and shinobi chatted adamantly with each other as more and more rumors were spread. I heard he killed Tuanbu easily. I heard he looks like a blonde Adonis, hee. All over he was talked about. Gen and Cell Team Number 7 had swiftly made it back to Konoha to get a bit of rest. The whole experience in the Forest of Death left them completely drained. Sakura was still in a state of shock at what she had witnessed. The power he displayed. The absolute control he had over the creatures of the forest. Then again, she wasn't sure if all of them were under his control as opposed to just following him willingly. She turned to her teammates to try and get a feel for what they might have been feeling. Sasuke, of course, was pissed. She understood why, though. He had been humiliated by the Beast King with a single punch and a few well-placed words. She knew he was either cursing the blonde for having a power stronger than his, or he was contemplating on how to get as strong as Naruto. Sai was a blank. His expression showed no feelings whatsoever. Perhaps it was because of his upbringing. His father Danzo runs Route ANBU and therefore naturally trained his son in the path of no emotion and unfeeling personality. Kakashi was of course buried nose deep in his perverted book, but she could see that he too was deep in thought. Kakashi-sensei?" she began. Kakashi shifted his gaze to his pink-haired student and raised an eyebrow. Just as she was about to ask her question, she was cut off. "If you want to get trained, you'll have to find someone else. I have to train Sasuke for the upcoming final rounds." Sakura glared when she heard this. He really thought that's what she wanted. Damn arrogant ass perverted sensei. Instead of proceeding with her question, she huffed and stormed off. "Fuck it then," she yelled as she leapt away, her second personality temporarily surfacing. Kakashi just sighed and turned back to Sasuke. Sai was already gone, probably off to get training from his father en route. "Well, let's go. We have a lot to cover." Sasuke just grunted and followed while his thoughts once again drifted to Naruto. "I will get stronger. If that dope can do it, then I will too. I won't fall behind you." Sasuke winced in pain slightly as the seal on his shoulder began to react. Kiba and Akamaru walked home in a daze. The Beast King Uzumaki Naruto could control him. He could control Akamaru. He could control the entirety of the Inuzuka clan. It was such an exciting feeling knowing he was so closely linked to one such as the Beast King. But at the same time it was frightening as well. He and his clan had also taken part in mistreating him in a desperate attempt to stave off their instinctual urge to submit to him. They denied the fact that Naruto was their lord whether they liked it or not, and they desperately did everything to make sure the boy stayed away from them. They were cruel to him. "Oh man, how am I gonna tell mom and sis this? They're big fans of the Beast King. And what if Naruto remembers what we did to him? Oh man, what a drag. Shit! I sound like Shikamaru." "Kiba? Kiba! Hey, you're back." Kiba was brought out of his thoughts when a buxom woman wearing a partially unzipped Chunin vest with nothing underneath except nicely developed breasts approached him with a smile. Like Kiba, she too had red triangles on her face, and she had 3 dog partners following close behind. "Oh, hi Hana and Ai-chan." Hana paused and raised an eyebrow at his less than enthusiastic voice. "Something wrong, Kiba?" she asked. But before he could answer, another woman appeared. She had a feral beauty about her and wild brown hair. Her dog partner stood beside her looking powerful and respected. Inuzuka-san grinned down at her son and was getting ready to enthusiastically ask if he was proceeding on to the final rounds when she saw his expression. "Eh? What's your problem?" Kiba just sighed and said in a low whisper. "I met the Beast King." The 2 women gasped and were instantly upon him with questions. "Really? He's real? What's he like? Tell us. How powerful was he?" Kiba couldn't help but smile. The 2 were so excited right now. But it was time to ruin the moment. No matter how much he didn't want to. "Mom. Hana. The Beast King is so powerful I doubt a small army of ninja could take him on and win. His control over fire is at a level that is not human, and his mastery over the creatures of the Forest of Death, or any animal for that matter, could cripple both the Aburame and the Inuzuka clans and anyone who summons for that matter. I've never seen anything like what he can do. He can even transform." The 2 women looked up with dreamy looks in their eyes. "Now that's one hell of an alpha male," said Sim. Hana just nodded. Kiba grinned then sighed sadly. "You're right. But Mom, Hana, the Beast King is Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto." Sabaka no Gaara sat in the trees overlooking a training ground and pondered. He had never experienced something like what the Beast King had done to him. His sand was utterly useless against him. Something he had never thought possible before. Just what was he? Suddenly his sand slid out of his gourd and began to condense in shape, floating in front of him until eventually a black-colored version of Gaara appeared. This other Gaara had a sadistic gleam in his eyes and his smile radiated bloodlust and hate. "Don't worry about that fool Gaara. He was strong. Way too strong for us." Gaara nodded. "Yeah, but what was he?" The sand looked up in thought, then grinned sadistically. Perhaps during the invasion, as we drain the lives from our victims, we will find out. Gaara nodded. Or maybe if he leaves that forest and aids Konoha, his power will attract that demon bitch so we can rip her head off once and for all. Gaara nodded with his resolve hardening. Yes. That would be most satisfying. The sand chuckled evilly and began to seep back into the gourd, but a sudden yell halted that. Gaara looked down, surprised as a girl with bright pink hair entered the training ground. He would have scoffed at this pathetic kunoichi had she not been talking to herself with two apparent voices. One that sounded angry and sad while the other sounded vulgar, bold, and overly confident. Gaara and his second personality brought to life through iron sand were both surprised. Well, now this is interesting. They watched as Sakura punched a training log and yelled out, "Why? I know I'm weak. This last few days has shown me that, and seeing someone like Naruto, who was utterly nothing all those years ago, become something of a local legend only makes me feel worse." She pounded on the log again and caused it to split in half. "Oh, shut up, you stupid bimbo," she screamed in a different voice. "You are weak. You are pathetic. You spend so much time fawning over Sasuke that you completely neglect your job. You even neglect to use me now. So quit your bitching and do something about it." Sakura sighed. Her second self was so brutally unforgiving. Even when she was first created when she was 5. Now that brought back memories. She was a shy, quiet girl whose feeling could be easily hurt. She was the constant brunt of cruel jokes from others due to her large forehead and her clan's unique pink hair. This second personality was a result of this. She had thought herself ugly and deformed. Her confidence was non-existent, and her voice never rose above a whisper. She bottled up her sadness when around others, then released it all when she got home to her mother and other clanmates. She remembered telling her mother that she regretted joining the ninja academy and that she was going to withdraw. But then something happened the very next day while in the flower arranging class. It was meeting Yamanaka Ino. The day she met that girl was the day her life changed. Ino's confidence and loud voice completely overwhelmed Sakura at first, but as she got to know the girl, she gradually calmed down. Ino was a wonderful influence on Sakura. She had convinced the pink-haired girl to keep going along the shinobi path. She had gotten her to open up more. She had done wonders for her. But Sakura held firm to her belief that she was not as pretty as the other girls. It was her personality. But then she received yet another huge confidence boost, and it eventually cost her the friendship with Ino. It came in the form of a rivalry for the one known as Uchiha Sasuke's love. This newfound confidence completely and permanently forced a change upon her psyche, and it resulted in another personality being formed in order to alter herself and Sasuke's supposed desired image. This new personality, born of great confidence and short temper, fought for dominance with her original meek personality. The result was a personality split all the way down to her soul. Split personality disorder, borderline schizophrenia. It's a mental illness that occurs within many but is most prominent with the Haruno clan. The members of this clan have very fragile psyches, and any amount of mental stress could result in this type of split. But unlike normal personality splits, the Harunos tend to divide all the way down to the soul. This is extremely dangerous and rare, only affecting 1 out of every 500,000 people. However, in the Haruno clan it is highly common. Sakura is the first ninja of her clan, so her potential is virtually an unknown. But according to Sarutobi himself, the Haruno clan has the potential to become one of the greatest ninja clans in Konoha. Due to having essentially two minds, their intelligence is high, their adaptability is very high, they are nearly immune to genjutsu, and they are extremely fast learners. They also tend to have photographic memories and perfect chakra control. Gaara, being one who suffers from the same illness as Sakura, saw her vast potential. He saw a kindred spirit in her. And the fact that her second personality still resided within her showed that she has not truly awakened her potential. He couldn't help but grin as he leapt down and landed in front of her. Oh! Sakura stumbled back and fell on her ass when Gaara dropped from above. What do you want?" she asked with a mix of fear and indignation. She hadn't forgotten what she had done to Lee, but at the same time she didn't like the fact that someone had seen her sulking as she was. Gaara approached slowly and crouched down to meet her eyes. Those emerald orbs were full of fear and determination. Gaara could see her muscles tense, her second personality surfacing and getting ready to fight. "You are like me," he said. Sakura gasped, What? Gaara merely reached out and caressed her cheek. An action she somehow found herself unable to prevent. She merely stared into his eyes. They were soft. Not at all like what she had seen during the preliminaries. They were completely different. This caused her confusion to grow. Tell me. Sakura looked at him, confused as he wiped a nearly dry tear from her cheek. What caused your personality to split? She gasped again and scurried back a few feet with eyes full of a sudden realization. Gaara smiled, though there was a bit of sick anticipation laced in that look. She couldn't say anything. Her heartbeat was going a mile a minute. It all made sense now. Why his eyes were so warm at one time yet murderous the very next second. Why his sand seemed to be alive. Gaara smiled as he saw her finally put it together and stood back up. I can help you grow strong. She looked up at him with surprise and trepidation, her mouth opening and closing but not forming any words. Gaara took a couple of steps to her and held out his hand. I have seen and heard of your plight. I myself went through a similar phase, if only for an extremely shorter amount of time before I found my drive. Tell me, what is your drive? What do you desire most in the entire world? Sakura was about to blurt out her immediate answer. She wanted Sasuke the most. That's what she was going to say. But something stopped her. It was Ger's second personality. Is it truly Sasuke you want? Or just the image of Sasuke? His confidence? His skill? His ability to cope with the harshness of life? She then thought of Naruto. His power. His confidence. His ability. The other genin too all had something in common. Confidence. Everyone around her didn't have a single doubt about their skills. They knew what they wanted and they reached for it despite whatever life might throw at them. Sakura looked up and thought. What did she want? Was it confidence? No. Her second personality had plenty of that. Was it Sasuke? Did she want him? She didn't know anymore. She looked back up at Gaara, who was still holding out his hand. What is it you want most in the world? She decided to take a chance and throw the question back at him in order to see what his drive was. Gaara seemed surprised by her question but got over it quickly. He looked up in thought then said, I want one thing and one thing only. Once I get that I will finally be able to go on with my life. He then reached up and bushed his hair from his forehead. Sakura gasped when she gazed upon the kanji for vengeance engraved onto his skull. I will have my revenge on the bitch that ruined my life and caused my personality split. I will use my sand to rip her limb from limb. Sakura held her hands to her mouth and stared at the tattoo with wide eyes, and Gaara once again held out his hand. Now tell me what it is you desire most? Sakura looked down at the ground. Many thoughts ran through her head until she had her answer. She didn't want Sasuke. Not if he didn't show what she desired from him. Love, she mumbled. Gaara raised an invisible eyebrow. Love? She nodded. Yes, love. I want love. I want to be adored. To be acknowledged. I want everyone to desire me. I want everyone to love and admire my power. I want to be strong. I want to find a soulmate to no longer be the butt of jokes. To no longer be seen as a weak nobody. I want to be loved and the confidence that will guide me to that love. By the end of her rant she had broken down into tears again and was looking down with her hair shadowing her eyes. Pathetic, huh? She said with a bitter sob. Gaara sighed and knelt down. He reached out and brushed her tears away. No. It's not a pathetic desire. She gasped yet again and snapped her vision back up to the Sunanin. To want to find love is not something you should be ashamed of. Love is one of the great paths to power after all. Sakura's eyes got wide, causing Gaara to smile and stand up, holding his hand out once again. This time Sakura wasted no time in grabbing his hand. Let's go then, sensei. Yeah. I want to see what your plan for me is. Gaara chuckled and vanished with Sakura in a swarm of sand. They were completely unaware of the two that had been watching, with huge eyes. Temari and Kankuro would forever remember the day that Gaara actually let his first personality surface in order to help a young woman. They didn't even seem to care that this posed a threat to the invasion. I can't believe that just happened, muttered Kankuro. Temari merely nodded her head. Sum and Hana took a step back in shock. The name Naruto was not an easily forgotten one. Hana was in a similar position. And Naruto? Why you mean? Kiba nodded and looked down. Biba, no, that can't be. But it is. Sum dropped to her knees. Kiba, does he remember? She asked. Kiba shook his head. I barely remember that day. I'm not sure if Naruto does. But if he does, he certainly does not care. Why would he not care? The entire Inuzuka clan once tried to kill him, exclaimed a near-frantic Hana. Kiba sighed. If he does remember and does not care, it's because he knows we no longer have the power to harm him anymore. What do you mean? Kiba looked up with a smile. The Beast King can control us. He really is the Lord of Beasts and anyone linked to them. If he wanted, he could make us his slaves and we wouldn't be able to do anything to stop it. With a single command and assertion of his amazing powers, he could force us all to kill ourselves. Hana and Sum gasped. And no way. Kiba nodded. Yep, and now the only question remains is what are we going to do? Sum looked at her son with a critical eye. What do you mean? She asked. Kiba sighed. I have already decided to be loyal to him, to be a part of his pack. We practically have no choice anyway. Sum sighed and looked up with a defeated sigh. Yeah, perhaps. Sum, spoke up her dog partner, Kuramura. Are you sure? Absolutely sure you're ready to submit to the Beast King? To finally obey your baser instincts, and become a servant of the one who is destined to lead our kind to greatness? Sum looked down at her dog and said, You know something, don't you? Kuramura chuckled and said, If you accept your fate, then I and the rest of the dogs will tell you the true legend of the one dubbed the First Lord of Beasts. A legend that has been passed down through the generations of every different species of beast on the planet. Kiba, Hana and Sum looked down at their dogs with surprise. Kiba had already made his decision, but Sum and Hana seemed hesitant. I need some time, muttered Sum after what seemed like an eternity. Yeah, me too, said Hana. Kuramura just shrugged and said, Very well, before he turned to leave. I suggest paying the Beast King a visit in his forest. It might help you make up your minds. Sum and Hana could only nod. Scene change. Naro Shikamaru was propped up against a large tree gazing up at the clouds, lost in thought. Like everyone else, he too remembered Naruto and his strange power. Up until earlier that day, it had never occurred to him that Naruto could be the famous Beast King. Even though all the clues were right there. Sigh, troublesome urban legends, getting all over dramatic and far-fetched. Then he thought about what he had seen in the Forest of Death. Maybe the rumors weren't as far-fetched as he thought, but still, because of the way people described him in the past, he had dismissed the rumors as stories meant to keep children in bed. There was no logic or sense behind what the people talked about. It sounded like a bunch of fairy tales, something he had never been interested in anyway. But if people were a bit more level-headed like him, he wouldn't have dismissed the stories, and he would have deduced years ago that Naruto was the Beast King they all talked about. The clues had all been there. It was so obvious now that he had facts, and not a bunch of drunken crap. Oh well. He had his answer now. He sighed again and was about to close his eyes when a scream suddenly rang through the air. Ugh, now what? He sighed as he got to his feet and peeked over the hill he was lying on. He saw the sound girl he had defeated in the preliminaries. She was in horrible shape. Her face was bruised and her clothes torn to shreds. She was running frantically toward the Forest of Death with a few other older sound nin hot on her trail. What the hell? He asked no one. Get away from me. I don't want to be sacrificed. No. You have no choice, girl. It is your purpose now. You will become fodder for Orochimaru-sama's Edo Tensei. No. Back off. The girl jammed a kunai into the thigh of the closest ninja, then dashed into the forest. Get back here, wench! Shikamaru watched as they all vanished into the trees and sighed again. The girl is in trouble. Should I go in after them? Oh man, this is such a drag. Troublesome girl going and refusing to be sacrificed. With more mumbling, he got to his feet and popped his neck and back a few times before vanishing into the shadow of the tree. After all, it was not in his nature to leave a woman in trouble. She ran into the Forest of Death without a second thought. She was angry, sad, and she felt betrayed all at the same time. Orochimaru had murdered her teammates in cold blood, claiming that their usefulness was done. When she had saw what she had done to them, she ran. But Orochimaru had known she was there, and had sent some of his goons after her. She didn't know what to do. Was she really going to die? Was she really just a pawn in her master's eyes? Such a realization had nearly crumbled her resolve right there, but her desire to live had overridden that. She leapt over a large bush just as a hail of 6 kunai sailed at her, then dashed to the right. I won't die. Not today! She yelled as she dodged another hail of the small ninja weapons. Think again, bitch. Zanqua. Kin didn't have any time to react. The shock of discovering that someone other than Zaku possessed the surgically implanted air cannons had stunned her and left her wide open for the attack. She was slammed in the back and lifted 6 meters into the air before she slammed into a tree with great force. All she could do was try desperately to regain her breath as she fell back to the ground and smashed into it hard. She looked up with clouded vision and saw her 6 pursuers land in a circle around her. Hey, you gave us quite a chase, girl, but it's time to end this little game of yours. You're going to die, bitch, so quit crying about it. Everyone serves a purpose when allied with Orochimaru-sama. Yours just happens to be that of a lowly pawn. The 6th then began to laugh mockingly at her. Now come on. Orochimaru-sama is waiting for his last pawn. Kin closed her eyes in defeat. She really was going to die. Betrayed by the one she thought was her everything. Hey. What the? I can't move. What? I can't move either. Oh shit, either can I. What's going on? Kin's surprise caused her to open her eyes. Once she did, she was greeted by the sight of the 6 Sound Nin struggle in vain against an invisible force. She was about to voice her own confusion when the answer came to her in the form of a lazy and annoyed-sounding voice. Kage main no jutsu success, it said. Kin found her eyes widening and she sprang to her feet. No goddamn way. You. Indeed it was. The very same Konoha genin that had defeated her in a very embarrassing way emerged from the shadow of a huge tree with his hands in his pockets. He looked over at her with a blank expression, then to the fuming Sound Nin. You all distracted me from my cloud watching. Troublesome bunch of ninja. The leader of the group sneered and said, Shut it, you pathetic little Konoha genin. Shikamaru merely sighed and said, Pathetic, huh? It seems you are all the more pathetic ones, chasing down a girl with 6 full-grown men. And what's this about using her as a sacrifice? Fuck you. You'll know when Orochimaru-sama destroys this village. Shikamaru sighed again, not very intelligent either. You don't reveal your sinister plans to the enemy. At this the group's eyes widened. Yeah, that's right. You screwed up. And you know what else? The Nin glared at the young man with hate. Shikamaru's face suddenly transformed into a scowl and hands of shadow crept up their bodies and to their necks. I don't like it when men pick on women. The 6 Sound Nin suddenly began to gasp for air as the hands proceeded to choke them out. Ugh. Akeno. After several minutes, all 6 of them dropped dead. Their windpipes crushed. Kin stared with wide eyes. He could do that with his shadow. Shikamaru looked at Kin and said, Stay out of trouble next time, you troublesome female. I can't be there to save you all the time no matter how cute you are. Kin blushed then scowled. I don't need to be saved. Asshole. Whatever, just stay out of. His sentence died down as a large pack of wolves suddenly emerged from the bushes and numerous birds landed on the branches above. What now? Yelled out Kin. Shikamaru looked at the creatures before him and sighed. We're in the forest of death. Naruto must know we're here. Kin froze up. Do you think he's hostile? Unlikely. He probably wanted to know what all the commotion in his forest was about. It was then that the wolves came forward and converged on the bodies of the fallen Sound Nin. Or they could be looking for their next free meal, said Shikamaru as the wolves began to drag the bodies into the forest. I think we should go, said Kin. Shikamaru was about to agree when a smaller wolf tugged on his pant leg. The wolf was black and had golden eyes. It was growling a bit, trying to get its message across to him. Shikamaru being the genius he is, quickly figured out what the wolf wanted. Come on. It wants us to follow it. What? Just come on. Kin sighed. She didn't like this, but she had nowhere else to be, and she figured it's smarter to stay with the guy that just saved her life. Without really thinking, she grabbed a hold of Shikamaru's arm as the two followed the pack of wolves deeper into the forest of death. I think they're taking us to Naruto, said Shikamaru after he got over his slight shock at having the girl grab onto his arm like that. Kin merely nodded and pressed herself a bit closer to him. The two followed the wolves for well over a half an hour, and they both noticed that the creatures seemed to get larger and more intelligent looking as they got deeper in the forest. Shikamaru quickly realized that the Forest of Death is very much larger than portrayed on the map they were given for the Chunin exams. That or the forest connected to a larger forest hidden somewhere behind Konoha. His thoughts were cut short as he came to a massive clearing and what looked like a crater, in a valley about 100 feet down. But what really had his attention was what was in the crater. Kin gasped and said, "Oh my sweet Kami." The wolves seemed amused by their reactions. It was then that Naruto suddenly dropped from the sky and landed in front of them. He was grinning like a madman as his wings receded into his back. He gestured with his hand toward the utopia in front of them and said in the best human tongue he could, "Welcome to Beast King home. You here for train?" The two looked at him confused. Naruto looked up in thought, then listened as a humming bird chirped quickly in his ear. When it flew away, Naruto grinned again and looked at the two in front of him. Birds observe village. Birds say shinobi train for month. Wolves found you in forest. You train? Kin had a sudden realization, as did Shikamaru, but unlike Kin, whose excitement was growing, Shikamaru was trying not to groan. "Naruto-san, we were not training. I saved the girl from some enemies." He pointed at the dead Otonin that were already half-eaten, then to Kin. "We ended up in the forest by chance only." Naruto looked at them with that same grin, then said, "Want train?" Shikamaru was afraid of this. Damn, how was he going to say no? His day started out so promising too. Just as he was about to give his answer, along with a witty reason on why not, Kin gasped and said, "Training with Konoha's fabled Beast King? Hell yeah! Come on, lazy boy, let's do this." Shikamaru had to refrain from cursing. Naruto grinned and said, "Great. I make you strong. Make you like Beast." Naruto then guided both genin toward his home, ignoring the groans from Shikamaru. Enter Sasuke and the Hakimada. Sakura and Gaara appeared, ironically, in a field covered in dried-out cherry blossom petals. The trees were bursting with the delectable maroon fruits, and the sun shined brightly down upon them. Sakura stumbled back a bit and looked around frantically. "Calm down. I'm not going to injure you," said Gaara with amusement shining in his eyes. Sakura took a couple of breaths before she steeled her resolve. Sorry," she muttered. Gaara took a step closer and said, "Do not be afraid of me. I will do no harm to you, no matter what personality is in control at the moment. I will train you." Sakura could only nod. Gaara's entire aura intimidated her to no end. He reeked of power, but in a malevolent way. Not like Naruto, whose aura was wild and happy like the beasts he associates with. But her interest was already high. Gaara suffered from a split personality disorder. Just like her. His sand was infused with the second personality, and therefore brought the sand to life. He seeks revenge on a demon, and he sought her out. He came to her and offered her power. She found herself smiling a bit as her second personality cheered inside. Gaara suddenly gestured around him. "See these old dried-out cherry blossom petals?" She nodded. "I will teach you how to turn them into sand." She gasped. "Why, you can teach me that?" Gaara nodded. "With perfect chakra control and a second soul residing within your body, it is possible. You will infuse your more violent personality into the cherry blossoms around you. You will use chakra to cut them up into near invisible grains, then harden those grains. And you will work on your own confidence, your own power. I was born with the iron sand ability, but you and your second personality might be able to simulate it by bonding with a piece of the world that most suits you." Sakura didn't know what to say. All she could do was ask, "Why?" Gaara looked up, then said, "Curiosity? Your spirit called out to mine. I will help you any way I can. I want to see if it is possible to recreate the Shikaku's ability again." Sakura stared at Gaara for a whole minute. This must be the original personality. He was so gentle, so direct, but in a good way. She straightened out and stepped up to Gaara. "Okay then, sensei. Teach me." Gaara could only smile a near invisible smile. Kakashi Hatake is a man in his mid-20s. He's hailed as one of the strongest ninja in Konoha and has 1,000 jutsus under his belt. He possesses the feared Sharingan and is the creator of the widely known Chidori. He became a Chunin at age 6 and a Jounin a couple of years after that. He gives off an aura of incompetence and laziness, but he is really quite intelligent and cunning. Sasuke Uchiha was in a way similar. He was born from the noble and powerful Uchiha clan. He is a very intelligent and cunning boy with a lust for power, and his one purpose in life is to get the revenge he so deserves upon his brother. Well, that and to restore the Uchiha clan. However, he has been having a bit of a problem lately, and that problem was getting worse every moment. Kakashi couldn't help but be worried when Sasuke repeatedly clutched at the curse seal on his neck. Ever since he brought the young man out here to train, Sasuke has been having increasing problems with it. The boy fought hard against it. Kakashi could see that the boy didn't want anything to do with the seal. It was trying to possess him, and Sasuke's pride as an Uchiha forbid himself from allowing anything to control him, except his lust for revenge. Sasuke knew what powers the cursed seal could bring him. He knew that if he accepted Orochimaru's seal, then he would undoubtedly become extremely powerful. However, after witnessing Naruto's power, he began to question himself. Naruto was a boy that had no ninja training. He slacked off in the academy when they were kids and he acted like a complete idiot. Though he did have a special power when it came to animals. Now, years later, Naruto is quite possibly the strongest being in Konoha. If he could do that, then surely he could too? He didn't need to borrow some snake fag's cursed power. This, of course, had a negative reaction to the seal. He constantly fought against it. He could feel it trying to overtake his body. He looked at Kakashi and grunted. "Alright, what do you have planned for me?" Kakashi smiled and said, "You know of the Chidori, right? I will teach you that." Sasuke nodded. And for the next few days, Kakashi worked with Sasuke on his speed to get him up to the level needed to execute a respectable Chidori, both completely unaware of the third presence that seemed to be sleeping in the deep ravine below as they trained. "Alright, Sasuke, you're almost there. Try using a bit of Lee's taijutsu to help improve." Sasuke nodded, instantly remembering the moves he had managed to copy from Lee during his little challenge before the first stage of the Chunin exams. He didn't pay any extra thought to the fact that he had effectively stolen Lee's hard-earned taijutsu, and Kakashi didn't seem to either. Sasuke just concentrated on gaining the speed necessary for the Chidori with his Sharingan blazing in his eyes. As he dashed around the training grounds with gravity seals glowing on his legs, he once again fought off a pulse from the cursed seal. It was quickly becoming annoying. Tsum and Hana made it to the Forest of Death and wasted no time in leaping over the fence and into it. They had listened to Kuramaru's advice and decided to pay the Beast King a visit before they decided on whether or not they should submit to him. It was a big decision to them. To submit to their baser instincts and become members of Naruto's pack meant to place their loyalty more to him than to Konoha and the Hokage. Their instincts would not settle for anything else. This was something that didn't sit very well with them. The two women leapt through the trees with the grace and skill of any elite kunoichi, and they made sure to avoid some of the more vicious beasts known to prowl through the forest. They traveled for a couple of hours until they picked up a scent. It was the scent of blood. They wondered if it was a poor Genin's corpse from the Chunin exams, but then dismissed that. This scent was newer than the others and it was completely covered by the scent of wolves as well. Curiosity got the better of them and they followed it. What they found caused them to gasp. It was a round crater about 100 feet deep. But it was what was in the crater that had the gasping. It was a paradise, a picture of beauty that could only be described in paintings. Huge luscious green trees swayed in the cool breeze, hundreds of different multicolored birds squawked happily as they flew through the air without a care in the world. White tigers and black bears lazed about and numerous flowers painted the entire area a series of golds, reds, pinks, purples and oranges. A magnificent waterfall and a crystal-clear river that flowed through the area dazzled the crater with bright rainbows and a crisp clean air, and every single plant was practically radiating life. And right in the center of all of this was a large hut. Several larger snakes and a pack of 30 wolves rested lazily around the hut in a protective manner. Tsum and Hana barely held in gasps. This place was unlike any piece of nature they had ever seen. "Be beautiful," said Hana with his hands on her mouth. Tsum could only nod. "I am sure Naruto lives down there." Tsum nodded and steeled her resolve. "Come on, Hana. We came this far. Let's finish." Why yeah?" As the two women got closer and closer to the floor of the crater, they felt their nervousness growing. What was Naruto like? Would he order the beasts currently lazing about his home to attack? What if he remembered? How would he feel about them? These questions continued to pour through their minds as they got to the bottom. They were borderline scared by the time their feet finally touched the ground. They exchanged nervous looks with each other before they started to trek towards Naruto's home. They became tense instantly when several beasts leapt to attention and looked at them with a look that said, "Who are you? What do you want? Intruders." Mom? I'm not sure coming here was a good idea," said Hana as the bears and the tigers began to move closer. "No, you think?" said Tsum with a sarcastic voice. "What do we do? If they attack, we fight and run like hell." "How the hell are we supposed to do that? Look at all of them." "Just shut up and follow my lead." The two Inuzuka women tensed up and prepared to strike, but before they could do anything, something landed behind them and made a weird noise that caused the beasts to back off and return to their previous positions. The two froze. "Who are you? Not expect more visitors." The voice was smooth and authoritative. The only thing wrong was the broken speech. Slowly the two women turned around to face the newcomer. They gasped when they saw him. He stood 6 feet tall and had stunning blue eyes that seemed to glow in the sun. His long yellow hair glimmered and his muscles rippled beneath his tan skin. He was perfection. He stood there looking confused and a bit annoyed as he looked at the two. There were two other people slung over his shoulders. A girl with really long hair and, to their surprise, Shikamaru. Both were covered in dirt scrapes and bruises and were unconscious. Naruto looked at the two women and said, "Why you here?" Hana and Sim, however, had completely zoned out. As soon as they laid eyes on Naruto, all sense of awareness vanished. Their instincts kicked in with an intensity that they could not avoid. "Alpha!" screamed both women's instincts, but they fought it. Desperately. And lost. Before Naruto could ask again why they were here, Sim and Hana dropped to their knees and bowed before him. "Naruto-sama," they both huffed out in ragged breaths. Naruto had been surprised by the sudden action, but it soon turned into mirth. He walked around them and towards his hut. "Come," he said. The two women followed without hesitation. The other beasts seemed to be entertained by the two Inuzuka women, and it showed in their eyes. As the two women followed Naruto into his hut, they slowly regained a bit of control over their instincts. Damn, Naruto just reeked of power, authority, and energy. Their instincts blared in the backs of their minds. Alpha male. Mate material. Is what kept screaming in the backs of their minds. They had to suppress their urges. Naruto laid Kin and Shikamaru down on a large mat made of fur and chuckled softly before he turned back to the women in front of him. Both were sitting down on their knees with the hands on their laps, and their heads were bowed. Naruto walked up to them and patted both women on the head affectionately, causing them to flinch then sigh. "Names?" he asked. Both women looked up at him with surprised looks. "Hana Inuzuka. Sim Inuzuka." Naruto seemed surprised at first, then he said, "Why you here?" They didn't know what to say. Just flat out tell him they were here to see if he was worthy of them joining him? Yeah, for obvious reasons, that made no sense. If anything, Naruto would be deciding if they were worthy of joining him. "We came to meet you," said Hana with a voice marred with nervousness. "Meet me? Why?" Sim slowly looked up and locked eyes with Naruto. "We've heard a lot about you. We know you're the Beast King." Naruto crossed his arms and huffed. "Hear lots about that. People call me King of Beasts. I not get it, but know my power, you dog women, right? Like the Kiba?" They nodded slowly. It seemed Kiba was telling the truth when he said he meant Naruto. Naruto sniffed a few times, then knelt down. He lifted Hana's face by her chin to meet her eyes, then he did the same to Sim. Naruto noticed that Sim was a bit more dog-like than Hana. After staring into their eyes for a full minute, causing them both to blush, he stood back up and smiled down at them. "Walk with me," he said as he exited the hut again. Sim and Hana exchanged looks before they followed him out. They could barely suppress their urges by this point. It was beginning to overpower them. "Naruto-sama," they both thought with increasingly ragged breaths. "It's become a problem." It was official. Kakashi could only look on in shock as Sasuke dropped to his knees howling in pain. 3 weeks into the training and Sasuke has managed to get the basic concept of the Chidori. He still lacked the speed, but he had the move down. However, the curse seal had been acting increasingly more violent each day. The more Sasuke refused to use it despite his dark thoughts, the more it reacted. Sasuke had come to the decision that he would grow strong without the aid of the cursed seal. However, this vow went against his very nature and therefore had a rather negative effect on the cursed seal. It became stronger in its attempt to posse Sasuke, and it was winning in its battle against the Uchiha's will. Sasuke clutched at the seal and looked up at Kakashi. "Kakashi, get away!" he yelled as a purple mist started seeping from the seal. Kakashi made to protest, but a large surge of chakra saw to it that Kakashi was out of the area. Shit. No! Sasuke-kun, why do you resist me? You know I could grant you power. Without me you are weak. You are pathetic. You will never kill your brother at this rate. Accept me. Use me. Submit to me. The voice of the cursed seal was powerful. It constantly spoke to him, playing upon his fears and weaknesses. It was wearing down his will, breaking away his resolve. "I won't." Another wave of pain tore through his body, and the purple mist began to spill from the seal with more intensity. Black markings began to spread from the seal, covering the right side of his face, his neck, and his right arm. No! Damn it! But it was no use now. The seal had activated, and the voice in his head was all but a blaring siren now. He collapsed to the ground and began to convulse, and the seal completely overtook his body, covering him fully in the black flame markings. Sasuke let out an earth-shattering scream. The seal, the voice, and the purple chakra. They had him. Sasuke could do nothing anymore. The seal was powerful. He could feel it seeping into his mind. It was anchoring its roots into his very soul. Ugh. He jumped to his feet, clutching his head. Nuh! Get out of my head! It's too late, Sasuke-kun. You're mine now. The voice was Orochimaru's, slick and mocking with a hint of sinister desire. Sasuke hated that voice. He hated the way it seemed to reverberate through the area. The purple chakra increased in intensity as Sasuke continued to fight against the voice and the seal, his body pulsating with the tainted power. The Uchiha was barely aware of the fact that his body was transforming. The markings expanded and turned his skin a purplish gray. His hair grew wild, long and shaggy, and the whites of his eyes turned black while the irises turned yellow. It's no use fighting it, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke clutched harder at his head. No! It's not! Get out! Get out! Kakashi arrived just in time to see a huge hand-shaped wing burst from Sasuke's back and clutch tightly around him, causing the boy to stumble backwards. Sasuke! Yelled the copy Nin. Sasuke looked over at Kakashi with those mutated eyes of his and shook his head aspiratingly. Stay back! Sasuke! Sasuke struggled against the hand wing as it tightened its grip around him. He stumbled backwards as it continued to try and free himself from its clutches. Kakashi gasped when he saw the cliff and the ravine, but it was too late. Kakashi stared in shock as Sasuke stumbled over the edge and fell into the darkness of the ravine below. She had been asleep for over 30 years. There was utterly nothing to do back then, so she decided to go into hibernation. She was still young. A very rambunctious young woman that didn't get along well with the other 8. 30 years ago there was nothing interesting going on, so she decided to sleep through it all. It was no big deal. She didn't want to go back to her boring life in Nick either. She woke up to a faint power radiating from above. It smelled like a snake. She took a bit of time to question what it might have been. Was it a demon? It certainly felt like one. C-class at most. Pretty average. She listened for a few minutes as whatever it was up there screamed a few times as if in pain. Perhaps that demon was fighting up there. Oh well, it was of no consequence to her. She had just closed her eyes again and prepared to go back to sleep when something landed hard on the ground before her. It was the demon she sensed earlier. The snake. A pair of glowing golden eyes shined in the darkness as they examined the form on the ground. Then a rather loud gasp echoed throughout the darkness as a massive white and golden dragon with 8 long reptilian tails stepped out of the shadows and sniffed a few times. It's a human! Exclaimed the dragon in a feminine young voice that told of her adolescence. She nudged the human with the tail. It was true. It was indeed a human. But there was something wrong. He was being taken over by a tainted aura. One she came to realize was not fully demonic or natural. Probably transplanted from another, however the scent of snake was there. This must have been done by a powerful Hibi Hanyu attempting to make slaves out of humans. She couldn't really understand it all. Hanyas and humans were so damn complicated. They made things more difficult than they had to be. The human groaned in pain as the appendage growing from his back squeezed his body. She raised an eyebrow. So the aura hadn't fully taken him over yet. This human must have a strong spirit to be able to hold it off this long. Even if his body had been complexly taken. She smirked and giggled lightly. Perhaps it won't be so boring after all. And with that, she jammed the tips of all 8 of her tails into the human and flooded his body with her yukai. The effect was instant. The snake Hanyu aura evaporated in an instant. Nowhere near powerful enough to stand up to hers, and the black markings completely lifted from his body. She listened as the aura made a loud agonized scream as the transparent twisted form of a man with pale skin and golden eyes lifted from the mark on his neck and disintegrated into the air. Then the marking itself vanished. The appendage on his back turned to slime and fell to the ground, and his eyes turned back to normal. But she wasn't done. She pumped more yukai into his body and smiled when he transformed again into something more respectable. His eyes turned golden and slitted. His hair's bangs turned white and grew by another foot. Scale-like markings appeared on his neck and 2 horns grew from his forehead, curving back like a dragon's. His fingernails grew thick and sharp, his skin turned a bit paler than normal. Where that hand wing used to be, grew a large white dragon wing that shimmered with a golden dust-like substance, and a long reptilian bladed tail grew from his tailbone. And finally his canines grew long and protruded from his upper lip. She giggled as she examined her work. There now. He'd be fine. You're lucky you're so damn cute, she said as she began to shrink. The first thing he noticed was that he was fine. His body was no longer in pain and the voice from the curse seal was gone. He found himself questioning what happened. He knew there was no way he managed to fight it off. He was sure he was doomed. He sat up and looked around. not even noticing that his vision was far sharper than it had been before. What happened? Hi there, handsome. He spun around tense as soon as the sudden cheerful voice rang out through the darkness. But what he saw caused him to gasp. It was by far the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She looked to be a couple years older than he was, making her look to be 17 or 18. She had waist-long golden hair that was done up in a braided ponytail. Her eyes glowed golden and shined with playfulness and promiscuity. She was dressed in a black leather mini-skirt and a spaghetti strap half-shirt that showed her flat stomach and accentuated her ample breasts. She had full lips covered in purple lipstick and skin nearly as pale as Orochimaru. She had a perfectly fit build, one that told of power hidden behind that delicate form, but what really got to him was the large golden dragon wings and 8 tails, claws and fangs. On top of that, her aura was far more powerful than anything he had ever felt before. He couldn't stop himself from asking, What are you?" She giggled a bit and sashayed over to him, her lips curving into a flirtatious smile. "I am the second strongest demon lord of Makai and rival to the Kyuubi. You can call me Nyamai. I'm known in the Ryu no Hakimada." Sasuke gasped. She stepped up to him and whipped out a mirror. "And you, handsome, have just become a demon. Enter Niji and the goddess of fate. 2 days from now it will have been a month and the final rounds for the second part of the third stage of the Chunin exams will arrive. I wonder how much they all have improved?" Sarutobi could hide it well, but he was excited. These were all very promising genin. He knew they would put on an amazing show, and he knew because of their encounter with Naruto, they would all grow very strong in order to try and catch up to him. That thought led him to another. Naruto, the fabled beast king of beasts. The boy was powerful. He was everything described in the legends. Sarutobi was no fool. The day Naruto was born he went and conducted some research in order to find out why the animals seemed so happy about Naruto's birth. He didn't learn much from textbooks and old scrolls, however he did summon Enma to ask if he knew anything. Enma seemed extremely surprised and proceeded to tell his summoner everything, including how any summon that could not speak human would join with Naruto if him and the humans ever found themselves in a conflict. Naruto had that type of power. Even normal summons were susceptible to Naruto's influence. Sarutobi sighed a bit. Naruto didn't even know of the path he was on. Or he didn't think Naruto knew just how great his title is. He watched from the tower as many different foreign diplomats continued to pour into Konoha, all of them eager to see the upcoming fights. Most, though, no doubt wanted to see how the last Uchiha would fare. Sarutobi wondered how far Kakashi had gotten with Sasuke. And come to think of it, he hadn't seen any trace of several genin. There were reports of a nearby cherry tree field being used by the Sand Genin Gara. There were also numerous visits from Yoshino and Shikaka Nara looking for their son. Shikamaru had apparently vanished a day after the preliminary rounds. Enko seemed distracted by something. The Hyuga Council seemed hell-bent on making the branch house genin named Niji suffer because of his absolute defeat of the heiress, and the body of Hate Gecko was discovered not too long ago. Most likely done by an accomplice of Orochimaru. The entire village was on edge. He sighed a bit as he continued his paperwork. It was sure going to get eventful in 2 days. That was a sure thing. He remembered the day he met these two. He was but a pup and they seemed familiar to him. They were like him almost. Linked to beasts. Boated with animals. He remembered being so happy when he saw them talking to dogs and he eagerly approached them, hoping to make some human friends. But what happened was not what he wanted to happen. They seemed scared of him, and they seemed to struggle with their own bodies as they started to bow to him. At first he thought they might have been playing with him. But he remembered the dogs telling him to leave. That it wasn't safe for him because the members of the Inuzuka were trying to fight their instincts. It was at that time that one actually regained control of her body and slammed her foot into his sternum. He remembered as one by one the people recovered and joined in trying to beat the life out of him. They were at it for hours. Mocking him. Demanding why he had such power over them. He remembered telling them that it was just something he was born with, and that since they were part dog it affected them too. They only got madder, saying they were not part dog. They were human. They didn't bow to anyone, especially some kid. He remembered waking up in the garbage and being profoundly apologized to by their dogs. And he also remembered storming away with a scowl, fire seeping from his mouth with every angry breath. Thinking back about it even now made him a bit angry. But looking at the Tsum and the Hana now made him calm down. They were genuinely sorry for what they had done to him all those years ago, and they completely embraced him and accepted him as their alpha, their lord. The kin and the Shikamaru too. They both refused to bow, but they did call him Naruto-sama and Lord Naruto. This was because of their changes. Naruto knew the extent of his abilities as the Beast Lord. He had discovered several abilities during his time in the forest. Fire manipulation was one. Transformation was another. And one such discovered ability allowed him to remake Kin and Shikamaru, completely adding them to his ranks. He was not unaware of his title either. He knew of the prophecies told about him. How could he not? He can talk to animals and they were all more than willing to fill him in on the details. He still didn't quite get it, but he rolled with it anyway. He briefly wondered if he'd ever meet any of those other lords. The lords of Tenchi sounded intriguing, and the demon lords seemed to be familiar to him. Why, though, he couldn't figure out. He cast those thoughts away as he looked at the four in front of him. Trained good, he said to Kin and Shikamaru, the latter of which sighed in relief at finally having it over. I'm most proud to call you beasts. Please don't call me a beast, said Shikamaru, causing Kin to laugh and wrap her arm around his while Naruto grinned and patted him on the head. An action that earned him a glare. Naruto's grin never left his face as he faced Sum and Hana. Tell the Kiba to visit. He can become beast too if wants to. Sum nodded and said, I will, Naruto-sama. Naruto nodded, then grabbed her in a hug, followed by Hana, who tried to give his ear a playful nibble. Take care, Naruto-sama, she said with an affectionate smile. And remember that our offer is still there. We'd be more than willing, said Sum as she licked her lips. The prospect of mating with such a perfect specimen of alpha male got her hot and bothered constantly. It was like Naruto put her into heat whenever he was around. It was the same for Hana too and many of the female beasts that roamed about his home. Naruto felt his face heat up in a blush. He knew what they were talking about. 2 days after they met him, they became so driven by instincts and hormones that they tried to fuck him in the middle of the night. They came in reeking of lust, and they were both buck naked. He had to admit they had beautiful bodies, but he wouldn't just mate with any female. The female would have to prove her strength to him first. And he hasn't really had the time to fully test Hana and Sum. He had managed to calm them down and get them to get a hold of themselves, though it didn't stop the flirting and the repeated offers. Kin and Shikamaru observed the two Inuzuka women. Shikamaru, not being a female, couldn't quite grasp why they were so overwhelmingly wanting of Naruto, but Kin could. She understood perfectly what the two felt. Like Shikamaru, she trained with Naruto. But he did more than just make them better fighters. He literally transformed them both and further transformed the two Inuzuka women. This in turn tuned her into her baser instincts, and greatly tuned her into the world around her. She knew what her animal instincts wanted, and she nearly found herself in Shika's bed several times because of them before she forced herself to get a grip. At first she was slightly afraid of these new sensations, these bestial desires and overwhelming feelings. It was not something her human mind was used to. She was used to thinking logically and clearly. But with this new mindset she rushed into things more often. She was jumpy and she constantly felt the need to establish her dominance over others. If something feared her, she capitalized on it. Especially when hunting. Naruto had finally noticed something and told her not to fear her instincts but to learn to control them a bit. Learn to get them to work with her human mind. He told her that these feelings were how beasts survived. It was natural. So as she stared at Hana and Sum, who were emitting pheromones that only animals could detect, she came to understand what they felt. After that she managed to stop going after Shikamaru. She liked Shika. A lot. And the fact that he had come to her rescue all that time ago further spurred that affection on, but she wasn't exactly comfortable with desiring to fuck Shikamaru every night, and she was sure he felt the same. Though her bestial side completely disagreed. Naruto looked at all four of them and smiled. He was glad to finally have some humans added to his ranks. It gave him a chance to use one of his previously neglected powers. Now they stood before him, new and improved. He felt proud with himself. He waved his hand in a playful shooing manner. Now go. Have humans to shock. Sum smirked. Oh, I can't wait to see Kiba's face. It's gonna be priceless. Shikamaru just sighed and said, I just hope my mom doesn't freak out and kill me, said Shikamaru. Kin smiled. Don't worry, Shikaku-and, I'll protect you. I'm not sure that's a good idea, Kin. Kin just chuckled as she sunk into a pool of darkness with Shikamaru and vanished. Sum and Hana both grinned. Show off, Nara, they both said before turning and leaping up the crater walls and back into the forest of death. Naruto just stood there smiling as a tiger nuzzled his cheek. Naruto couldn't help but ponder about those four. They were sure to shock the humans once they showed themselves, and his name would begin to spread outside of Konoha's walls. He knew that once this happened he'd be forced to leave his forest more often in order to keep different people from constantly invading it, trying to either join his ranks, attack him, or test his strength. Then those conflicts and encounters might alert the so-called lords of the other realms to his existence. He was still a bit skeptical about certain prospects of the beast's prophecy. For one, he didn't really believe in angels and death gods, and the thought of demons existing seemed far-fetched to him. Something in the back of his mind suddenly disagreed with that. It insisted that he had actually met a demon once before. Where, though, he could not remember. He rubbed the tiger's ears and smiled as he sprouted a pair of bird's wings. He was hungry, and though he was the king of beasts, he still had to hunt every once in a while to eat. It was how any beast survived. Lord Naruto, the humans begin their contest after the sun has fallen and risen twice. Naruto nodded as the humming bird passed its message. Are you going to watch? Naruto shrugged and took to the skies above the forest of death. Maybe, he said. Niji Hyuga fell to the ground hollering in pain and clutching his forehead. His mind scrambling as the caged bird seal on his forehead took complete control of his senses and flooded them all with untold amounts of pain. This is what you get for trying to kill the heiress' lowly servant. Do not let it happen again. Niji cursed and spit at their feet. A second later his body is once again twitching on the ground. He could barely make out the figures of three elders as they used the seal on him, their smirks never leaving their faces. It was always like this. Ever since they discovered his talent for juken, they had ostracized him. Targeted him simply because they refused to believe that a lowly servant could have purer blood than them. As Niji lay there writhing in pain and wishing desperately to break free of the fate he has been handed, a soft feminine voice whispered into his ear. Do you really wish to break free of me? I thought I could trust you, Niji-kun. Niji ignored the voice at first. He had more important things to worry about, like his brain turning to jelly in his skull. The elders seemed intent on killing him with that seal for his insolence. But before they could, Hayashi came in and adamantly threw the old fools out before laying an unconscious Niji in his room. When he woke up, he found himself looking up out of the window, like a bird yearning for freedom. Damn it. Is this my fate? To die a miserable death at the hands of a bunch of pathetic old fools? He questioned himself. It does not have to be, Niji-kun. Fate can be changed. Niji responded to the voice that time. No. You are born with a predetermined destiny. You cannot change it. The voice sighed and said, though I'm greatly flattered to have such a handsome young man so believing in me, I also much tsk at you. Do you not think me flexible? Then what is my fate then, since you know so much? There was a giggle. Then your fate is to die by those old men if you continue to disrespect them as you do. Those old relics do not deserve my respect. They should be respecting me instead. But you believe it will never happen because it is your fate? Exactly. If my father had been born first, then my fate wouldn't have been what it is now. But Niji-kun, your fate can be changed. Why should I believe that? Huh. I've seen how hard some try and always end up failing while believing they could change. Even the heiress, a weak, pathetic little girl, tried to prove me wrong by trying to defeat me. Yet her fate is to one day rule the Hyuga clan. The unfairness of life proves to me that fate cannot be changed. The voice sighed, and suddenly Niji felt someone embracing him in a loving manner. Slender arm wrapped softly under his arms and around his torso. He could feel a pair of firm breasts against his back, and he could feel someone breathing in his ear. You're whining about the unfairness of life? That's rather immature. Niji huffed and crossed his arms, ignoring the woman. Niji-kun, I have seen millions of fates. Final destinations to many people's lives, and there were so many other endings they could have reached. Niji-kun. Fate is not set in stone. Niji's eyes had gotten huge. Whoever was hugging him radiated with an aura of power he had never felt before. It was something that would have even the Hokage stepping back in fear. He finally found his voice after 3 minutes. Who are you? The woman smiled and turned Niji around to face her. And what he saw caused him to gasp. She was glowing white and nearly transparent. She wore flowing white silk robes and had short light blue hair. But what had caused him to gasp was the glowing ring floating above her head and the 2 huge white feathery wings that were spread out and emitting a calm and warming energy from them. She was gorgeous. I am one of the 6 lords of the realm of heaven. I govern all things having to do with the paths walked through life, and I decide what destiny your life will take depending on your actions. Call me the goddess of fate. Niji-kun, your spirit and devotion to me has interested me, so I have come down to get to know you. Not many like you exist anymore. Niji could only gape. This was the goddess of fate. Wait, a goddess of fate actually existed. He knew fate existed, but he didn't know a goddess for it did. Fate smiled and pulled Niji close to her. Now then. I grant you some measure of my power, and I free you from your cage. Make me proud, Niji-kun. I'll come and watch you in the finals. She then planed her soft, beautiful lips on his forehead. There was a bright flash of light as Niji was transformed forever. Whoa! Niji shot out of bed and fell unceremoniously to the floor, bashing his skull on the ground. It was that dream again, the happiest moment in his life. Nearly a month ago, when all of that took place. It was still fresh in his mind. The day the goddess of fate turned him into a tenchi. None of the other Hyugas could believe it. Not even when they came crashing into the room during his transformation. They still stared whenever he walked through the compound. His glowing blue halo and snow-white wings attracted the attention of everyone. Thus is the reason he didn't go outside into Konoha. He didn't really need that at the moment. The elders had been furious, demanding to know where he had gotten such power. Niji had merely smirked and said fate. The only thing that kept them from attacking them was Hayashi. He checked to make sure the bandages were wrapped securely on his forehead. He didn't want the elders to know that his caged bird seal was gone. Not yet. He wondered how everyone was going to react. Heh. He looked forward to showing off his new form. No one was bound to have changed this much. Little did he know that there were two other contestants thinking the exact same thing. From above, Fate watched as Niji prepared for his fight in 2 days with an affectionate smile. In the Forest of Death, Naruto wondered how Shikamaru was going to do. Miles outside of Konoha, Nimai smiled and offered Sasuke and a still stunned Kakashi a ride back to the village. And in a flower-petal-less cherry blossom field, Sakura smiled and gave Gaara a hug before vanishing in a swirl of pink sand while wishing him good luck and telling him thanks for believing in her. Both were unaware of the pair of golden star pupil eyes narrowing and gleaming with insane bloodlust. Naruto himself thought more as he rested in the river. Some of the animals wanted to go and watch the humans fight, while others urged him to stay in the forest. He understood both sides. But he was rather curious. The humans had some pretty amazing abilities. The Shikamaru, the Kin, the Hana, and the Tsum had proven that to him many times while they stayed with him. He was rather excited about the prospect of adding more humans to his ranks. After they became a part of his domain, they could teach their abilities to the beasts. Teach them how to use their chakra. Naruto himself was not that interested in learning ninjutsu. He already had the fire on his side, and the only thing he found useful for chakra was the healing he could do with it. But if beasts such as the raptors or the wolves learned how to use chakra... He grinned. Unknown to Naruto, there was an extremely powerful being who was thinking the same thing about him. Not a day goes by that she doesn't think about the day she met him. Uzumaki Naruto. The firstborn lord of the animal. She nearly scoffed at this. His potential was far too great to be being wasted on such unworthy lower life-form creatures known as the animal. Animals were practically worthless. They had no special abilities and only served to irritate any demon they had the nerve to challenge. They were nothing but prey. But that boy was different. She sensed it within him all those years back. He had potential to become a legend, but under the wrong banner. She sat in her den and gave a sultry smile. Perhaps it was time to go and reintroduce herself to him. He's been hanging around animals for far too long. Now the only obstacle was when to go and see him. Surely if he still lives in that pathetic human village, those humans would lash out. She knew she could simply burn the entire place to the ground, but that might push the Beast King away. She could not have that. She sat and pondered as she feasted on a group of lions. Even animals supposedly as majestic as lions were nothing but food to her. She had to get Naruto to join the demon's side. He would do so much better there, by her side. Her tails flickered in excitement. She would go to him in a couple of weeks. She fell asleep with one last degrading thought about animals. Lowly creatures are not worthy of such a powerful being. I will make him a demon, my mate, and together we will feast on you all. She dreamt all night about her and Naruto as they slaughtered everything in their path. It was going to be so easy. Surely he was growing tired of hanging around such lowly creatures. She had no idea just how wrong she was. In 2 days the final matches for the Chunin exams begin. In 2 days Orochimaru was going to attack Konoha with the aid of the sand. In 2 days Niji, Sasuke and Shikamaru would make themselves known. And in 2 days the story begins, for Naruto and numerous others. Sarutobi sat in his office and sighed. He just knew things were about to get eventful in 2 days. He just hoped that they would be because of something positive, despite his old student's menacing presence. Of course he's learned that eventful days usually never meant anything good happening. He closed his eyes. It's nice to dream though. Suddenly the doors burst open as the clearly shocked Yugago burst into the room. Hokage-sama, you're not going to believe this, began the woman but was cut off. Hey! I'm coming, and so get modest, old man. Sarutobi instantly recognized the voice. This was another that had vanished a month ago. Go ahead and enter Tsum, he said. He briefly noted that Yugago still looked shocked. A second later he found out why. The entire village already knows as they strolled through like nothing was wrong, said Yugago while trying not to stare. Sarutobi was not so lucky. His eyes were bugging out of his head and his mouth was moving in the manner of a fish's. Tsum and Hana Inuzuka stood before him, changed. Literally. Both women's hair was wilder, their canines longer than normal, their nails sharp, and their bodies stronger looking. But that was nothing. No, the biggest part were the fact that both women had a fluffy dog tail wagging behind them. What the hell happened? He yelled, mere milliseconds away from calling Anbu to search for whoever did this to them. Hana grinned and looked up with a dreamy look in her eyes while Tsum smiled. Naruto-sama. Sarutobi's eyes widened. And Naruto? Said Hana. And just wait until you see the Nara boy. His changes were even greater, said Tsum. Yugago, Sarutobi and the shinobi hidden behind a powerful genjutsu all gasped. People changed and Leaf attacked. Sarutobi sat in the kage box looking down as the people poured into the stadium was still in a state of shock at what he had seen and been told 2 days prior. Just what the hell was going on? It appeared that Naruto knew far more about his title than he had originally given credit for. Tsum, Hana and apparently Shikamaru had been transformed by Naruto and added to the ranks of beasts. No longer completely human. Sarutobi pondered and pondered for 2 whole days on this. This was something that would cause an outrage when the council found out. And there was no way in hell this was not going to cause uproar. If they thought Naruto was a freak before and were slightly scared of him for it, what would they think when they learned that Naruto could effectively steal the loyalty of anyone he wanted? Their fear and poor judgment would shoot through the roof, creating and bringing forth conflicts that Konoha could not afford to be trying to create. Sarutobi was so caught up in his thoughts that he pretty much ignored the arrival of the Kazekage, and he didn't say anything when the man told him that he should consider finding another Hokage before long. Hell, he didn't even register the fact that a tall man with white hair had landed next to him. But the Kazekage did, and he looked worried. All over the stadium people poured in and found their seats. The excitement was high. It was very high. Bets were placed, polls were taken and shady deals were made. The feudal lords were especially excited as they looked forward to seeing one Uchiha Sasuke fight Gaara of the desert. It was the most anticipated of matches. They watched eager as the genin started to arrive on the arena floor, and so did a few others. Ino, Kiba, Hinata, Choji and Tenten sat in a group toward the front of the middle section of seats and commented about the genin down in front of them. My Sasuke-kun is sure to win this thing, exclaimed an excited Ino as she pumped a fist into the air. Are you sure? I mean, Niji is a formidable opponent. He might win. On top of that, there's Gaara. That guy swells with power. This comment came from Kiba. Ino huffed and crossed her arms. Sasuke-kun will win, said Ino again. Kiba sighed. Geez, you didn't even say anything about Shikamaru. Isn't he your teammate? You're fickle, Ino. Hey, shut up, dog boy. I may adore Sasuke-kun, but I'm not the one who bowed to Naruto in front of everyone. Hey, I couldn't help it. You try being an Inuzuka and not feel compelled to bow to him. Choji just chuckled while Hinata gave a blush when she thought about Naruto's near-naked, well-sculpted body. Well, now that you two are done fighting, how about we just watch and see? Suggested a slightly annoyed Tenten. The others nodded and looked down at the genin. Only to notice that Sasuke, Niji and Shikamaru were all missing. What the hell? Nearly half of them are gone, yelled Ino. Geez, quiet down, said Kiba as he clutched his ears. Yes, pig, shut it. Your voice hurts my ears. Ino turned to yell out a snappy retort, only to gasp at whom stood before her. Sakura. Whoa, said Kiba while Choji stopped shoving chips into his mouth. Tenten was also surprised. Sakura smirked and took a seat next to Ino. Yes, I know I look good, but please quit staring. Ino shook her head to regain her senses. Sakura had changed. She had completely had a makeover. Her red dress and black spandex shorts had been replaced by a black miniskirt, fishnet shorts, a pair of black leather boots, a pair of pink fighter's gloves, a pink wrap that covered her chest and exposed her belly, and a long black sleeveless duster that just barely didn't scrape on the ground. Her hair was short due to her experience in the Forest of Death, and her headband for Konoha was still in its position on top of her head. But the most drastic change was the huge hourglass full of swirling pink sand that was strapped to her back and the blood-red kanji for love that was carved into her forehead. What the hell? Sakura just smiled and said, I met someone who understood me. He then helped me get my priorities straight. I owe him a huge deal. Ino noticed that the sand inside of Sakura's hourglass swirled more after she said that. It was also then that she had a realization as she looked down at the still as a statue form of Gaara on the arena floor. Asked Sakura, who did you train with? Sakura only smirked. If you haven't figured it out yet, then I'm not telling you. Kiba was shaking in fear. What the hell is she thinking? Choji just nodded and turned back towards the stadium. He was more worried as to why Shikamaru wasn't around. In the stands, a woman with short blue hair and a very beautiful figure sat at the tops of the seats. She had come to see one person today, despite the fact that the other 5 had laughed at her. Oh well. Good luck, Niji, she thought. Finally, after everyone had settled in, Sarutobi rose, his inner thoughts having finally been quelled for the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, I as the Sandaime Hokage am honored to have you all here today so that you may attend the final part of the Chunin examinations today. I hope you all have a good time, and I hope the matches will give you all excitement and entertainment. Now, without further ado, let the tournament begin. There were cheers from the audience. Gunma, the new proctor due to Hayate's untimely death, stepped forward and examined the genin in front of him. 3 of them are missing. I hope the Hyuga gets here before I begin his match. Gunma was a bit annoyed by their lack of punctuality but decided to let it go. Alright, you all. Stand proud and face the audience. Today you guys are the stars. The genin all gained slight smiles. Now then, let the first match of the tournament begin. Sai and Hyuga Niji report to the floor. The rest of you head to the waiting booth. Sai had also changed a bit. He now wore a black vest and had a black katana that had no sheath, strapped to his waist. He waited with no visible emotion as the others headed to the waiting area. His opponent was a Hyuga. Danzo had drilled numerous lessons into him about fighting against the Jukin. He felt that he was prepared. But when a spear of light suddenly shot from the sky and blinded everyone, and the voice of his opponent rang out saying, I apologize for my lack of punctuality. I had to get dressed for this occasion, Sai felt a bit unnerved. What type of power was that? Danzo hadn't told him any Hyuga could do that type of shunshin. And it only got worse for him as the light faded, causing everyone except for the Hyugas in the audience to gasp. Up in the stands, the blue-haired woman couldn't help but smirk. No damn way! Yelled Anko. What hell is this? Sarutobi, who had finally managed to cast away his thoughts about Naruto, Tsum and Hana suddenly found more coming back, and he could only mumble in a voice full of shock, what is this? Did Naruto? No. This isn't the work of the Beast King. The Kazekage looked thoughtful and very surprised as well. Niji stood there facing his opponent with an arrogant smirk, his huge white wings folded behind him and the halo glowing above his head. His wardrobe had completely done a 180. No longer did he wear the tradition Hyuga robes. Now he wore a pair of white pants and no shirt. His stomach, chest, neck and right arm was covered in bandages decorated in dark blue ancient-looking symbols. A white chest plate and a metal guard that covered the left shoulder and upper arm along with samurai-style outer thigh armor completed the look. Niji's smirk grew even more as the kanji for fate appeared on the back of his upper body armor. His forehead protector had been modified. The fabric part had been replaced with a very long silk strip of cloth that was also decorated in those symbols, and as it billowed in the breeze, numerous females couldn't help but gape. He's an angel. How the hell did that happen? He's freaking gorgeous. Sai, even though he was trained as an emotionless shinobi, he still couldn't help but wonder. Where did you get this power? He asked. Niji had only smirked more and said fate. Ginma, who was still openly gaping at Niji, took a minute to finally begin the match before leaping away. Up in that stands, Tenten looked at a shocked Ino. Still think Sasuke can win? She asked with a smirk. Ino was about to respond when Sakura replied with, Gaara will win. This statement had surprised them all so much that their attention was drawn away from the angel-fied Niji and to the suddenly sand-wielding Kunoichi. Ino had been the most stunned. Wasn't Sakura one of Sasuke-kun's biggest fangirls? Where did this sudden interest in that psycho Sunanin come from? Sakura, as if sensing Ino's question, merely shrugged. I've seen how strong Gaara is, and trust me, Sasuke is not as strong as he is. Nor is anyone else in this tournament for that matter. Sakura was indeed greatly surprised with Niji's transformation. But she showed no outward emotion to show it. In her opinion, Gaara was by far the most powerful person down there. Him and his second personality infused metal sand. Ino huffed and glared. She had no idea when Sakura had met Gaara or decided that Sasuke was weak, but she didn't like it. This sudden interest in Gaara was not natural. Tenten and Choji directed their attention back to the arena floor. Niji and Sai had begun their fight. Sai circled slowly around his winged opponent and slowly drew his katana. Quite interesting, Hyuga Niji. Can all members of your clan transform into a Tenchi? Niji, who was eyeing his opponent, said no. This power was given to me by someone else. Sai nodded and said, I see. He then rushed at Niji with speeds greater than most genin should be able to execute, and slammed his foot into Niji's chest. It seems all that angel stuff is just for show, said Sai. Niji huffed and took up a fighting stance. Says you, he said before he activated his Byakugan. Try it again. Sai did just that, but this time Niji was prepared. As Sai's foot came at his face, Niji lashed out with his own attack, his palms slamming right into Sai's foot and throwing him back a good distance while at the same time flooding the boy's leg with chakra. Sai hissed in pain as he landed. That one blow had already nearly rendered his leg useless. This continued on for 10 more minutes as the two continued to escalate their battle. Eventually jutsus were thrown out by Sai in the forms of earth spikes, fireballs, and ink drawings. Niji's bloodline limit allowed for him to easily avoid the attacks and counter with his own. His fighting style being more centered around taijutsu caused him to spring forward whenever there was an opening and strike with a palm or a deceptively devastating poke of the finger. Sai, being whose son he is, was able to avoid the strikes with the grace and speed of an elite. His emotionless eyes never left the angel Hyuga in front of him as he drew his katana. Very impressive, Hyuga Niji. However, I think it's time to stop holding back. Show me your angel's power. Sai then brought up his black katana while releasing a massive amount of chakra and smirked for the first time. Niji's eyes barely had time to widen before Sai's weapon was in his shoulder. The audience gasped in surprise. I didn't even see him move, yelled several people. Niji hissed as the blood poured from his shoulder as he put more chakra into his eyes. He moved so fast. Sai raised his katana and prepared to strike again. Niji glared. Fine then, he thought as Sai vanished. Niji didn't need to see his opponent to know what he had planned, and he reacted accordingly. As Sai's weapon came down upon him, chakra both white and normal exploded from Niji's tenketsu, and he started to spin. And the Hyugas in the audience could only gape in astonishment as Niji yelled out his attack. K10! Sai slammed into the swirling chakra barrier and felt his katana shatter on impact, showering the entire area in ink as Niji's attack flung it all over. Sai's eyes widened for the first time that day. You're not supposed to know that move, he said as he slammed into the wall. Niji glared as the ink fell to the ground around him, not a drop on his body. His wings spread out wide and raised high for the first time that day as his hunched over. Of course not. I'm merely a servant of the main house. I'm not permitted to such luxuries. So I taught myself. There were gasps among the Hyuga. It is said that fate is a bitch. I was born a slave, yet I have the greatest potential. I have the makings to be the greatest Hyuga. For a while I thought that was never going to happen, that I was never fated to achieve that greatness. I thought fate was unbendable, that I was doomed to be a slave forever despite my abilities. The audience got quiet as they listened. Niji was obviously going somewhere with this conversation. However, I recently learned that is not the case. Fate is quite flexible. She is a very understanding and merciful being. She gave me the gifts, and I can now determine my own fate. I owe that beautiful goddess my life. Up in the stands, the blue-haired woman's face heated up in a blush. Niji reached up and tore his headgear off, revealing his bare forehead to the world. Hayashi gasped along with every other Hyuga. But that's impossible. Niji's smirk turned borderline sadistic, and the wind was beginning to swirl around him. You're right. It's time to stop holding back, he said. At Sai's blank face, Niji got annoyed, so with a slight glare he said, Let me show you what I mean. Fate watched with admiration as she felt Niji's angelic chakra flare. So he had been training his new power. She wondered what he had come up with. I will show you the power I have gained. The entire crowd watched in fascination as Niji began to glow white. He ran towards the stadium with a speed he didn't normally use, his partner right next to him. During their training with the Beast King, they had completely forgotten to warn the Hokage of the impending danger from the sound. Shikamaru and Kin said nothing as they neared the stadium, but were silently thankful that there was no one around to freak out over their appearance. It would have cut into the already minute amount of time they had. Shikamaru grabbed Kin's hand and leapt into the shadow of the closest building. just as a massive spire of white light shot up from the center of the stadium. Sasuke and Nimai instantly snapped their heads to the right as the spire of light shot into the sky, and both growled in their throats. The feeling of this energy, Sasuke didn't know why, but it angered him, brought out his desire to rid the world of the holder of such energy. Nimai, on the other hand, knew exactly what that was. That energy belonged to one creature, the mortal enemy of the demon, their polar opposite and the yang to their yin. Kakashi gazed over at the light and asked the question that was on Sasuke's mind. What is that light? Nimai suppressed her instinctual desires and answered as her glowing eyes remained locked on the light. Angel, she said. Wait, what? Angel? A Tenchi? Are you for real? Nimai nodded. An action that looked quite intimidating considering her current form as she sailed towards Konoha. Yes. But I don't understand why an angel would be shit. There's a Tenchi lord in your village, and it appears they transformed a human. What? Yeah. Looks like you have a rival, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke smirked and licked his lips in anticipation. He felt glad that he wasn't the only one being transformed by otherworldly beings. This should be fun. Nimai merely giggled while Kakashi hoped that whoever had been transformed wasn't someone Sasuke would see as a rival and vice versa. People would one day laugh at him as he realized just how wrong he was. Naruto's head snapped up and he stared in the direction of Konoha. He could feel that energy in the air. It felt calm, tranquil and pure while at the same time felt powerful, dangerous and unstable. The beasts around him had also snapped at attention. What that? He asked himself as the white light began to fade. Not ever felt before. The beasts were just as confused and a bit unnerved. Naruto could understand them. This feeling. It was not coming from chakra, or rather. Master Naruto began a worried tigress as she rubbed up against his leg. Naruto scratched the cat's ears and smiled. Not worry. Not concern us. The tigress seemed to relax at his declaration. She knew that her king had been contemplating venturing to the humans' home ever since they came to the forest, and she was worried. Whatever was emitting that energy was not human. And that worried her because the beasts were already slightly afraid of humans. Especially some of the weaker species, and if the humans were hanging out with something stronger, then it warranted a cause to stay as far away as possible. Not that she was worried for her king's safety. Naruto was stronger than whatever that was, however she and the other beasts were not. She flopped onto her side and let the Beast King rest his back and head on her side and took note of the fact that he was periodically glancing in the direction of the human's home. Shock couldn't even begin to describe the feeling everyone was exulting at the moment as Niji unleashed his power. When he said that he was holding back, they all imagined that his speed would increase a bit. Or he might start to unleash numerous jutsus he had picked up during the month of rest and training. Hell, they even imagined that he had somehow recreated or invented numerous new Juken techniques. But what they saw was clearly something else. The white chakra swirled around the Hyuga prodigy like a tornado as his wings gave a powerful flap and propelled him 30 feet into the air. His pale pupilless irises completely vanished and left behind empty blank brilliantly glowing voids in their place. His halo glowed just as brightly as his eyes did and his hair and bandages billowed wildly, adding to the majestic look he had. Sai stared up in shock as Niji hovered above him, his wings taking periodic flaps to keep him suspended in the air. The energy swirling around the area keeping him blinded and disoriented. You see? Began Niji with that superior smirk of his. You were fated to lose to me the moment your name was drawn against my own. He raised his right hand and a double-edged long sword appeared in a flash of light. Then he raised his left arm and a knight's shield decorated with a white dove appeared on that. Prepare to lose. Orochimaru watched in awe and excitement as Niji vanished and proceeded to decimate his foe with the skillful use of his wings. It was like he'd been doing it his whole life. Sai didn't stand a chance despite his very impressive abilities. What is this power? I've never seen anything like it. Kukukaku, if I could make something like that available to me, think of the possibilities. Unknown to Niji, Orochimaru had found himself another target. The other participating genin were stunned. None of them could say anything. Even Gaara was silent. This display of power was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It felt very different from the power the beast kind had wielded, so he knew the blonde had nothing to do with this. But despite all of that, he felt his excitement growing. In another part of the village, a woman's golden star pupil eyes narrowed in anger as the energy washed over her. The fuck's Tenchi doing here? Finally, the fight came to an end when Niji closed numerous tenketsu on Sai's body and pointed the tip of his blade at his throat. You were a worthy opponent, but you cannot face the power of fate, he said as his eyes returned to normal. Now surrender. Sai said nothing as he nodded his head and conceded defeat. Niji sighed and his sword and shield disappeared in flashes of light. The entire arena was dead quiet, all of them still not quite able to come to terms with what they have just seen. Finally Tenten started clapping. That was amazing! She yelled with a grin as she rose to her feet and continued to cheer. Eventually the rest of the people began to cheer as well. Sarutobi was still staring at Niji, trying to figure out where he got that power. He remembered the boy saying something about fate. It was almost as if he had meant no, that was not possible. A goddess of fate existing? It sounded ridiculous. Although this could all be related to Naruto and the beast's prophecy. He was about to congratulate Niji on a spectacular battle when something started happening down on the arena floor. Niji, Sai and Ginma's shadows started moving around on their own, then without warning they shot over and condensed together in the center of the floor. Before they could ask with shock what was going on, hundreds more shadows started collecting on that spot, getting fearful yelps from the people who owned said shadows. The entire stadium watched in fear as the shadows eventually formed a large pitch-black void in the center of the arena and started to form a pillar. Niji's weapons had formed again, and he was poised for battle with whatever this was. He wasn't about to get caught off guard. He activated his Byakugan in an attempt to see what was in that darkness, then gasped a second later. "It's you!" he exclaimed. A second later the darkness exploded outwards, turned back into shadows and returned to their owners, leaving behind two people. Faye. And here I thought Kin and I would be the only people changed. How troublesome that the Hyuga of all people would gain some sort of special power. The entire audience gasped at what stood before them, and so did the disguised Orochimaru. Ino's eyes were as big as plates. "What the fuck happened to you, lazy ass?" she screeched. Kin put fingers in her pointed ears. "Keep it down, will you?" "Sheesh." Shikamaru shrugged. "It was that troublesome beast king." Up in the stands, Fate stared wide-eyed at Shikamaru and Kin. "The Beast King?" Shikamaru sighed when he noticed everyone staring at him and said, "Do you mind?" "Sheesh." "Hey! What do you expect when you come here looking like that?" yelled Ino. It was true. Everyone in the stadium couldn't believe their eyes, much less who had done that to the two. Unlike the entity that changed Niji, they knew what the Beast King was. Some people started to eye Shikamaru with fear. Shikamaru and Kin both looked like they had been crossbred with panthers, Shikamaru more than Kin. While Kin's ears were pointed, her canines sharper, her fingernails more cat-like and her eyes golden, along with her midnight black tail swaying behind her and now wild short hair and dress similar to when she was at the prelims, Shikamaru was vastly more developed. He had fangs now that poked out from behind his upper lip. His eyes were yellow, slanted and cat-like. His feet were no longer the feet of a human. Now they were large black paws and covered in black fur. His hands were the same. Though still considerably human, they were also those of a panther with retractable claws and fur. He even had pads on his palms and fingers. His ears were long and pointed with a layer of fur on the outsides, while his hair was oily black and glinting with shadows. He had a long panther's tail and a lot more muscle than before. His clothing had changed a lot. His pants were frayed at the bottom and his vest had vanished, leaving only the fish netting. Over his shoulders was a brown fur cape that draped more to the left than it did to the back. It hung down and covered most of his left arm, and two deer antlers were sticking out from behind like wings, decorations of his liking. White bandages covered his abdomen, and his forehead protector glinted on his right arm. He shifted his eyes over to the Hokage and sighed again. "While I know my appearance warrants many questions, we have more important issues to worry about." He then nudged Kin, who glanced nervously around and kept an eye on the Kazekage. "Ahem, right then. Hokage-sama, I am Kintsuchi from the village hidden in the sound, and I have some very important news involving your village and mine." The Kazekage gasped and started to growl. "You little wench." Orochimaru gave the signal to Kabuto begin the operation early. Sarutobi took notice of the Kazekage's actions and became tense. "Yes, young lady, what is it?" Kin sighed and grabbed onto Shikamaru's cape nervously as she prepared to speak the words that would endanger her forever. "Orochimaru along with his village Oto and Suna are going to attack Konoha. I'd say the summons are already being called forth." "What?" The Kazekage suddenly sneered and lunged at Sarutobi. "Now!" he yelled. A second later all hell broke loose as a battle that would rock the world had begun. Just as Sasuke, Kakashi and Yamai appeared in a burst of golden fire. "Kill them all!" yelled Orochimaru as he leapt up with Sarutobi and had his 4 bodyguards create a barrier. Shikamaru and Kin noticed the arrival of Kakashi, Sasuke and Nyamai and held back a gasp at the Uchiha's new look. Their keen awareness attributed to their new natures made sure they didn't miss such a thing, but they had little time to worry about it as they saw Suna and Otonin rushing into the stadium. Sasuke went on the immediate offensive, and so did Kakashi. Nyamai just grinned and took flight with a cry of, "Show 'em what you can do, handsome." Niji was already in the sky heading towards the gates where several different huge snakes had appeared, and Sakura chased after Gaara as he and his siblings fled the stadium. "Can stay and assist Sai and the others," said Shikamaru as he noticed Sakura leap over the walls after the Sand siblings. His need to hunt had surfaced. "Do not let yourself get captured either." Kin glared and flexed her claws. "I can take care of myself." Shikamaru smirked and melted into the shadows. "Good." Sasuke's single wing spread out wide and he gave an ear-splitting roar. His match. He never got to have it. Heads were gonna roll. His eyes glowed golden and purple chakra swirled violently around him, while his killing instantly froze several battles. When they looked at him, they gasped and started to shake in fear. It's a D-demon!" yelled one shinobi a second before a fist slammed into his face. "That's right. And I'm about to show you why you don't take a demon's fight from him." The Jounins and the rest of the genin were acting as a team trying to protect the sleeping citizens, and the injured Lee. "Damn it, where'd Forehead go?" yelled Ino as she ducked under a kunai swipe. Choji just grunted as a Suna Chunin tried to slam into his armored chest. "I don't know. However, we have more important things to worry about. Like staying alive," yelled Tenten. Though she did briefly wonder where the fuck Niji flew off to. Shino couched against a nearby was. His nearly covered face marred in thought as he vanished. Sarutobi grunted against the sword of Orochimaru with a glare, the Anbu, all looking on unable to do anything because of the barrier. "Orochimaru! You monster!" yelled the Hokage as he delivered a powerful kick to the snake Sanin's chest. "Kukukuku-sensei, that's not a very nice thing to say. I thought we were comrades. A team." "Shut up. Today I'm going to do what I should have done already. Orochimaru, your ambitions end here." Orochimaru smirked and took up his battle stance. "Not even with all of these special children you've kept hidden from me will you win, Sarutobi-sensei. Then I'm going to take all of them and use them for my own ambitions. Kukuku, I can hardly wait to dissect them." Sarutobi scowled and did a few hand signs. Cerulean eyes snapped open as the winds wafted through his home. Muscles tensed and his nose twitched. "Blood," he said in a whisper. He jumped to his feet and sniffed a few more times. Shinobi blood. The beasts around him also tensed up. They too could smell it. The smell of conflict, a battle of large proportions, foreign smells invaded their noses and several different sources of a non-human power could be felt as well. He saw smoke billowing into the sky and he could hear the deaths of people as they were eliminated by their foes. At first he brushed it off as that test the shinobi were taking. But then after several more minutes the smells got worse and the smell of death increased dramatically. Beasts that resided within the village flooded into the forest full of panic and worry. Some were injured, caught in the crossfire. Naruto's eyes narrowed and he prepared for the enemy to flood his forest. But it never happened. The shinobi never came. Naruto relaxed and prepared to go back to sleep. He wanted to stay clear of the humans and their conflicts. It had nothing to do with him or the beasts. But suddenly another smell invaded his nose. A particular scent that actually had his anger level rising. It was the smell of the blood of the elder, the Hokage. The Hokage was in danger. He was dying. Naruto's eyes turned orange, and the air rapidly heated up. He didn't really care for most of the shinobi, but the Hokage was a different story. He was the only one who showed any level of liking for him when he was still small. Thoughts of the four he had trained also invaded his minds. His pack mates were also in danger. He let loose a growl and crouched down, fire exploding off of his body. Sarutobi coughed blood as he held Orochimaru's shoulders. A long blue sword lanced through his chest while the imposing figure of the Shinigami, Lord of the Underworld, hovered behind him. Orochimaru glared as he tried to get the Kusanagi to finish its job of impaling the Hokage, but the summon Enma held strong on the blade despite it cutting into his hand. The Shinigami was preparing to do what it was summoned for when he felt it. Power and heat wafted over the entire village, and a roar far louder and more terrifying than anything they had ever heard erupted from the forest of death. Enma froze. The snakes attacking the village froze, Gamabunta, Kakashi's dogs and every pet in the village froze. Fate gasped. Nimai's eyes got huge and excited. The Shinigami turned towards the source of the noise and the woman stalking Gaara gasped. Niji spun around, still hovering in the air and ignoring the sputters coming from the shinobi below him. His face twisted into a smirk. Sasuke unwrapped his tail from the neck of a sand shinobi and smiled as the heat engulfed the village. Shikamaru froze and found himself muttering, "Naruto-sama." And everyone else could only gape in astonishment and fear as a spire of fire shot straight up and instantly evaporated the clouds above. Sarutobi smirked at a visibly concerned Orochimaru and said the one phrase that would alert yet another realm to Naruto's existence. The Shinigami's eyes widened as Sarutobi said, "Looks like you pissed off the king of beasts." Fury of the beast. Bonding of the sands. Everyone watched in fascination and awe as the fire spiraled up into the air and switched from orange to blue to black then to white before vanishing as something shot out of it and sailed into the sky at incredible speeds. Orochimaru and Sarutobi both stared on, each other completely forgotten for the moment. Enma was still frozen and the numerous lords lurking in Konoha decided to sit back and observe. So the Beast Lord does exist. This ought to be interesting. I wonder why Niji-kun never told me of this, said Fate to herself as she heard the mortal old man proclaim his line to the Pale One. Nimai was thinking along similar lines, though hers were also along the lines of, "Oh, I'm so glad I decided to stay awake. I would have missed this." Other people weren't so positive about this, mainly the invading shinobi. They watched as the Beast King rocketed through the sky at speeds unheard of, right at the purple barrier surrounding the Otokage and the Hokage, and then they gasped as his flaming form became more and more visible, because Naruto was flying right at the purple barrier head first and with large feathered wings folded tightly against him. He wasn't using them. His long hair whipped about violently as a dome of fire spiraled around him and pushed backwards, propelling him like fuel would a missile. He looked like a comet. Sarutobi used Orochimaru's distraction to leap away and off of the Kusanagi with a spurt of blood. "I'm not getting caught in the middle of this," he said with a cough and a wicked smirk as he retreated into the compacted forest created by the previously resurrected first Hokage, then formed a powerful protective multi-layered earth dome around himself. Orochimaru barely had time to respond before Naruto smashed into the barrier with so much force the resulting shockwave threw anyone that wasn't rooted down with chakra. Then the barrier cackled and exploded in a display of fire and chakra a second before the fire itself exploded outwards and turned nearly everything in the vicinity into ash and glass. Orochimaru and the Sound Four were engulfed right then and there, only 3 of them surviving the inferno that came too suddenly for them to react while the dome around Sarutobi turned to glass but kept him safe. "My God!" exclaimed the ANBU captain, who was smart enough to have him and his squad retreat way before Naruto was even close. "Such power! Unbelievable!" said another. The people in the village that weren't already froze in shock at what they had just witnessed, then they started to sweat as the heat wave washed over them. The Shinigami, the Hakimata and the Goddess of Fate could only stare in shock as well. Thoughts of what they were witnessing were causing both excitement and anticipation to rise up in their beings. They were watching the birth of a new lord's legend. Orochimaru lowered the Rashomon gate he had managed to summon in the nick of time and smirked at what he saw despite that small inkling of fear that had risen up inside him. The area was an ashy ruin. Nothing was left, and the roof he was standing on was but a glass bowl still glowing in some places. He looked around and saw the smoking skeletons of 2 of his sound bodyguards, one with 6 arms and another with 2 heads. The other 2 had survived by the skin of their teeth by hiding behind an earth barrier created by the large one with orange hair, an earth barrier that was now made of glass. Tayuya and Jirobu were unconscious on the ground, marred with severe burns, but they were breathing. Orochimaru could see their curseals trying to keep them stable. Smoke and heat waves rose up into the sky and the sound of cackling embers could be heard as well. Naruto's senses were on overdrive at the moment. He ignored the shinobi in front of him and started to sniff the air, looking for the elder. Finally he pinpointed the old man's scent hidden beneath the dome of glass and was instantly at it. Orochimaru watched as Naruto's arm transformed into that of a gorilla and smashed right through the thick glass with a strength that a normal gorilla would never have been able to wield. The large fist gently wrapping around the old man and pulling him out of the barrier. Naruto felt something akin to shock as he lifted the elder up out of the glass and laid him gently on the ground in front of him. The stab wound from the Kusanagi was still gushing blood and the Beast King could see the life draining out of the Hokage's eyes. Naruto also made a mental note to find out what the floating spectral being that was hovering behind the Hokage was in the future, but for the moment he focused solely on the elder. "GG Hokage," he said with a soft smile. Sarutobi could only smile in pure joy when he locked eyes with Naruto. "Hello again, Naruto. I'm glad I could see you again one more time before I die." The Hokage clutched his wound and mentally cursed himself for not having the strength to continue on or even get the Shinigami to suck out any part of Orochimaru's soul. His old body just wasn't up to the task. Naruto felt the sadness well up inside of him as he assessed the elder's wounds. He had been stabbed through the chest right through the lung. Blood was collecting in the lung at an astonishing rate, and several bones had been broken, possibly in an earlier fight. And Naruto, have you come to help us? Have you come to lend a hand in stopping this invasion? Naruto looked on slightly confused. The elder was asking him something, but he didn't know what. He racked his brain, trying to find the meaning of the word invasion when the pale-skinned shinobi decided to speak. As Orochimaru watched the Beast King and his former sensei interact, his courage finally returned and he was able to speak again, his shock vanishing with each passing second as the village and his own allies still recovered from seeing that brief display of power from the blonde. Kukuku, so you are the infamous Beast King. Impressive. Instantly Naruto's eyes were locked on to him. The irises were flashing between orange and blue. Who you? He asked with a gruff voice. This put Orochimaru on edge once again, but he continued anyway. I am Orochimaru, Snake Sannin, and soon to be conqueror of this village and master of every jutsu in the world and then some. And what my old sensei means by invasion is what I am doing. I am taking this village for myself, and will kill all who stand in my way. He then pointed down. You see the ones down there wearing the sound and the sand symbols? They are the force that will end this village. Kukukuku. Naruto followed Orochimaru's gaze and saw that every eye was locked on him in fear, excitement, or astonishment. He saw the corpses of many shinobi both from the village and from the two that the Orochimaru had pointed out, and he also saw that for the moment, no one was fighting. His mind was on overdrive, the meanings of the words finally coming to light and hitting him with realization. The village was being attacked, the land being invaded by enemies. The home of the shinobi and therefore his home in the forest were in grave danger. The elder thought he came to help when in reality he merely came to see why the old man was bleeding to death. He had known a large-scale fight was happening, but he didn't know it was because of an invasion. The shinobi village wasn't his home. He cared little for it in reality. The village was the territory of someone else and therefore a piece of land not belonging to him. It was his neighbor, neither enemy nor ally. The place held little happy memories for him, but he did not blame them for it. Many other species treated differences the same way. But then as he stood there looking down at the village, almost all of it in ruin with several giant snakes at the walls and several different presences either human or beast lurking around in the village, he couldn't help but let out a sad sigh. He turned to the elder and kneeled down to look him in the eyes. This once, he said, causing Sarutobi's eyes to widen. We'll help village this once. For elder. He then placed his hands over the Hokage's wounds and said, chakra, causing said wounds to begin to heal. Orochimaru's eyes narrowed into a glare, and he drew the Kusanagi. No! The old man will die. He charged at great speeds preparing to take the Hokage's head off, but was stopped when a fist buried into his stomach and sent him over the edge and down to the ground below. Naruto glared and spread wings as he took to the sky. Orochimaru knew what was coming and shouted. Kill everyone you come across now. And it was with those words that it all resumed. Battle started back up immediately, and the snakes once again began to demolish the wall of Konoha. Orochimaru looked up at his foe. I said I'd take care of you if you interfered with my plans. I will hold up on this promise. He then did numerous hand signs before slamming his palm into the ground. Kuchios no Jutsu. Naruto watched in fascination as a gigantic talking purple snake appeared, killing many in the process and bringing Orochimaru to eye level with him. Orochimaru, what the hell do you want now? You had better have sacrifices, damn it. He then locked eyes with Naruto and glared. Who are you, brat? He didn't get to say anything else because Naruto appeared in front of him and stared into his eyes. Obey me, he commanded with a voice that would have scared anyone. Manda gasped as he felt his control leave and his instincts force him to submit, much to the shock of Orochimaru. He was so shocked in fact that he didn't even bother to block the foot that slammed into his temple. Naruto grinned a feral grin with fangs and everything as he assumed Orochimaru's spot on Manda's head. Orochimaru. I am Beast King. You fool to try and use Snake. Hokage asked me to help village. I will do that this once. Orochimaru sneered. Quit talking, boy. All I have seen so far are a bunch of fancy fire techniques. Do something new. Naruto smirked. Fine. And then they felt it. Naruto's presence washed all over the village like a thick fog. His influence seeping into every insect, every cat and dog, every pig, chicken, bird, Horse Summon Animal and the entire Inuzuka clan along with Kin, a distant Shikamaru and the hive of the Aburame clan. His energy felt nothing like chakra. It wasn't chakra. It was something else. Something not even the other lords could identify. It wasn't fire, but it felt just as wild and free. But it was also something that Naruto still hadn't completely mastered. Then he held up his arm. Orochimaru watched in fascination as fire exploded from it and collected around it, taking the form of a transparent fiery glowing gauntlet with claws more wicked-looking than the claws of a raptor. A flaming tail extended from his lower back and a helmet appeared covering the top of his head. It was shaped like the upper half of a wolf's head. Orochimaru couldn't help but marvel at the technique. The heat alone was messing with his body temperature. But before he or anyone else could continue to stare, Naruto's wings gave a powerful flap and shot him into the air. Now face Fury of Beast. Naruto then let out a call. It was a call unlike any other. It wasn't what he used to call the animals when he fought Gaara or when he talked to any of the beasts. No, this call was a beautiful melodic combination of a bird and a singer. Manda was the first one affected due to his close proximity to the Beast King. His mind was assaulted by the words that were laced in the call of that blonde boy. Attack! Kill the shinobi that threatened the village. Eliminate all of them. And he couldn't resist those orders. Not from this one. He turned and locked eyes with Orochimaru. Time to die, he said with a smirk. Orochimaru barely dodged the lunge from his own summon. Fucking brat. The effect of Naruto's call reached the entire forest around Konoha. Every animal and insect within the area froze as their king's order hit their minds, and as every one of them turned toward Konoha, images of what they were to attack flooded their minds as they began to move. Shikamaru froze as his instincts and mind were assaulted with Naruto's order. He felt the need to turn towards Konoha, but then his logic kicked in. He was already in pursuit of enemy shinobi. With a slight smirk he continued on, following the scent of one particular individual. Kiba instantly started to attack the sound and the sand shinobi with even greater ferocity than before. It was the same for Akamaru as the two unleashed barrage after barrage of Gatsugas on their foes in greater speeds they normally were not capable of. The other Konoha ninja around them looked at him in shock as the Inuzuka went completely monstrous in his attacks on the shinobi. Good God, what did that blonde boy do to him? Asked one shinobi as he knew that strange sound had to do with the Inuzuka's sudden ferocity. All around, the beasts of Konoha started to react. Entire packs and herds of animals sprung into immediate action, and everyone froze when the sounds of thousands of different animal cries assaulted their ears. Naruto smirked down at Orochimaru as the skies turned black with countless